How are we doing online? People back online? Or after? 16 after? Okay. The alarm so I don't just keep talking through the afternoon. All right, the exciting world of contracting and procurement. Are we ready? Ready to spend money? All right. People in the building, around here. All right, we're going to get started. They'll be popping back in anytime. And I'm sure people online are here, and there's one or two who are going to join us in just a couple minutes. All right, procurement. Here's where we are on the agenda. Look at us moving right along. Our procurement management plan. So our procurement management plan, taking a traditional approach. Now, it doesn't have to be just traditional, but we're making a plan. So we know our plan is a traditional approach, right? We're going to talk about how we're going to manage procurement if we're going out to vendors using contracts. Think about it that way, right? So using our purchase card, our P card, or doing contracts is really what we're going to talk about here in procurement. It's not like taking the cash funds and going to Walmart and buying some AA batteries so things work. It's not that kind of procurement. So in our plan, we're going to talk about what type of contracts are available for us to use, what authority our team has versus when we have to use a procurement office and the personnel there. We're going to talk about who has what kind of spending limits. So our team has a purchase card where we can spend $500, but if anything's more than $500, we have to go to PMO office that has $15,000 limit. And if it's more than $15,000, we have to go to the procurement office that has, unlimited amounts of money to spend. So if there's those kind of authorities or levels, we want to make sure that's in our procurement management plan. Any processes that we have to use, any procedures we need to use. If there's an approved vendor list, we may want to put that in our procurement management plan, or at least put where that is located so we know where to go find it if we need it. And then we're going to talk about how we're going to interact with our vendors, or how we're going to manage our vendors, how we're going to manage the deliverables that our vendors are going to provide to us. Right. So we're going to talk about all of that management plan. So we talk procurement. Here's the decisions we have to make. Do we make it or do we buy it? So before I decide to do procurement, I'm going to ask, do I make it or buy it? The make buy decision. So if I'm going to, part of what helps me make the decision is what are my impact to generally time and money, quality. Can I make it so that it saves me time if I make it? Maybe if I have to make it, it's going to cost me more time because it's already available if I can go buy it. Okay. What kind of quality am I going to get? If I'm making a resource for my team, a person, I can send them off to training. When they come back, there's going to be a learning curve. Can they implement what they learned in training? If I can accept that, it might be cheaper for me to send someone to training and then I have that skill in-house all along. If I need an expert, sending someone to training and then them coming back probably isn't, they're not going to be at expert level going off to training, right? So then I may need to buy an expert rather than make an expert. It takes time to make an expert.
When you say buy an expert, is this what, like, I mean, this is probably not this is the way my J1 brain works. Are you talking about FTE, consultant, or any of the mixture of any of that?
So it would be FTE, full-time equivalent, but not necessarily if I'm going to make them, it would be an FTE person assigned to me. If I'm going to buy them, I would contract to augment my team.
Okay, so contractor would.
So I would contract maybe a company that has the experts, or maybe I just contract someone to augment my team, or maybe I just contract with, one of the hundreds of government contractors around here that provide labor to the government.
The timeline in the government is probably so long that this would work, but potentially in a corporate environment, you could create a position and hire towards it.
Sure. Yeah. So I want to So there I'm going to actually make something because I'm going to create a position in my company. So when I think buy here is to go procure it, to go put it under contract. So if it's going to be in-house, I need someone who has these skills. I'm going to send someone off to training, or, I guess maybe if I'm going to hire someone who's already at the expert level, so I'm creating a new position for my company and I'm going to hire them, I guess that's a buy decision. But for here, buy, let's stick with contracting.
Yeah, so making would just be, on the personnel side, ensuring that someone, maybe they have the right skill set, you dusting it off, refreshing the training, or sending them to new training.
Right. So,
You wouldn't want a newly trained, under experienced employee leading something, but maybe.
yeah, so maybe your team can have a junior person on the team. So hired a recent college graduate and I'm going to send them to Power BI training so they can run our dashboard. They know they have a computer science degree. They know this. We'll just give them a little data analytics training to go along with, their computer science background. So that would be kind of making them, sending them off to training. But in looking at our make or buy decision, we really look at the impact to time, money, and quality. Do I get better quality in-house or do I take it out of house? Does it save me time or money to do it in-house or do I take it out of house? And again, make or buy applies to team members as well too. So another term I want you to know before we get rolling into procurement too much is opportunity cost. Did we talk about opportunity cost before? I feel like we did.
Little,
right?
yeah.
It's simply the cost of the option you did not choose. Right? So keep that in mind. Opportunity cost, it cost me this much money to train someone and it cost me this much money to contract someone. Which am I choosing? Right? And the opportunity cost is the cost of the option you did not choose. So it is highly likely a procurement strategy already exists. Now, in TRANSCOM, it is very highly likely that a procurement standard process already exists, and you have to use that process. You go to the procurement office, the contracting office, and they have fill out this paperwork, tell us what you need here, justify it this, get it approved for here. There's a definite process for how that works. And it's an organizational process, therefore it's a
Opa.
I need everybody online to come off and come off mute and everybody just go, Opa, all at once here, right? We'll do that next time. This is your warning if you're online. So an acquisition method. Are you allowed to just go pick someone out of the GSA catalog and say, hey, I want to do business with you and buy it from there? Maybe if it's a small purchase, you can, right? From the GSA catalog. I don't know. Are you allowed to go to a local vendor? Do you have to go get 3 bids before you can make a decision? Like, what are the processes that you're required to use in order to acquire some of the resources that you need? And then different types of contracts. We're going to talk about some of the contracts here in a little bit, but you want to think about the different types of contracts and which one fits best for the processes that you're going to use or the services you need. And then look at procurement phases. So there's a process for procurement where we may do some research, we may actually do some contracting, there's some management of the contract, and then we close out the contract. This is a test question, and this is important for project managers to know. Your project cannot be closed out and technically finished until all the contracts are closed out. So every contract must be closed before the project can close. So if you have a contractor who's in dispute with something, that could go on a really long time. And all your deliverables can be delivered. You may have completed every requirement you have, but there's a dispute about something in this contract. So your project technically is not closed. Now, you as the project manager may not do anything with it anymore. All your team members are off working on a different project. You may be having a different project you work with, but technically the project's still open. The procurement folks and maybe the legal folks are still dealing with your project. The project can't close until all the contracts close.
So for like the TRANSCOM side, you know, a lot of times the contracts get amended or reviewed and so like, you know, how does that look? So like, I mean, it's probably a bad example. So you're buying an F-35 and the company says, hey, we're gonna do this for the F-35 supply chain. F-35 goes a different way. That contract is no longer, I don't know if that contract is valid anymore or not, but that's not the right term. But then they're like, oh, actually, we don't need that part anymore. We need you to provide or do something else. So, I mean, it seems like there's sometimes contracts will just be in place for infinity in the military.
Mhm.
Sometimes it feels that way. So, I mean, does that mean that the project never really truly closes?
Well, eventually the project has an end date, comes to an end.
Sure.
Because it'll transition to operations. And we may end up having a sustainment piece. So contractors that helped us build it may stay on for a sustainment. Maybe we call it a project.
But a lot of times that's written into the initial contract. Would it just need to be defined as like, you would almost like phase it out and say, hey, the procurement phase, and then like you said, the operational or sustainment phase.
So there may be a separate contract that actually gets,
Okay.
but there are contracts that are IDIQ.
Yeah. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah, so the IDIQ allows that contract to get extended because starting off, I don't know exactly how much I need of a certain quantity of a product. So ideally in a contract, I'm going to say I'm buying this specific thing from you and I will pay you this much money. Well, in IDIQ, like we're going to build a software system. I don't know exactly what it's going to take because we don't know all the requirements, right? So an IDIQ allows you to have a contract and it stands for indefinite
Quantity.
It's a
IQ is indefinite quantity, indefinite
duration.
indefinite duration, indefinite quantity. Because I don't know exactly all my requirements. So I don't know exactly what quantity I need to buy. And I don't know the exact timeline. So an IDIQ allows me to have this freedom to move about in the contract world because contracts are pretty definite. It's like, you know, I'm buying this for this, period, done. We want to be as specific as we can, but especially an agile project, we can't be specific. So that indefinite duration, indefinite quantity allows us that we don't have to say this is a 5-year contract. This is a contract that's going to go until this project is completed.
It still has a time limit to it.
It has a time limit for like review, basically, right?
It's so, because there is an incentive that goes with it, right? So I am going to put $10,000 on this account for an IDIQ contract. So rent-a-cars is the way I've always done IDIQ for rent-a-cars. Come in, this is, you know, you are going to make just for holding rent-a-car things for me, you're guaranteed $5,000. But I might need 10 at NTC this month. I might need 20 at NTC this month. So I don't know.
Allows flexibility.
Right, it puts the flexibility in, but I have to recompete the contract amongst the rent-a-car companies over a certain period of time.
So IDIQ should really not go on forever, but it should match the project. So you shouldn't have a project go on.
I think I see what you're saying. It's like there's like a soft closeout, if you will. So like it closes, like when, like you said, it shouldn't go on forever.
The difference is if a train, an NTC rotation, which is the National Training Center, Army goes there and they spend X number of days there, right? The clan in which I rent that your requirement for the training project, right? When that closes out, my contract didn't close out, but I closed out the clan, right? I closed out just that piece. So you can close out.
So here's a test question. Anything can be tailored. We're going to talk processes, forms, templates, anything can be tailored. So you're going to get a test question where really the answer is anything can be tailored. And you're going to get a test question that says, you know, here's this process that results in this kind of form. You don't need this form. What can you do? And you're going to be like, well, I can tailor it because anything can be tailored. There's 2 test questions where really the answer is anything can be tailored. So a contract can be tailored as well too. We're going to talk about some standard templates, but especially IDIQ is designed to have that flexibility. Now, a project has a start date and a stop date. And an IDIQ that's assigned to a project should not continue beyond the stop date of that project. It should also stop. And then if they want a sustainment piece to it, or we're going to keep a requirements manager because we're going to continue to add features to whatever it is we build, then there should be a contract for that sustainment piece. So a sustainment contract. And actually, Brett has been involved with that process there. He's like, oh, I'm going to be delayed coming back because I have to go to the GOC floor. Like, oh, if he was here, he could share his experience. He's got lots of experience with just this topic right now. Vendors, how do you know who to buy from? So I know TRANSCOM has some approved vendor list. TRANSCOM has Scott Air Force Base and TRANSCOM. There are 4 different small business offices on Scott because we're required by law to give a certain percentage of our contracts to small businesses and certain disadvantaged small businesses. So we're going to work through that process as well to make sure we meet all of those regulations and that compliance we have to have. PMI says, don't forget to look at previous projects and see who their vendors were. And hopefully the previous projects have notes about which vendors worked really well, which vendors delivered on time, which vendors did not, which vendors were difficult to work with. So you can get information about the vendors to kind of help you decide. Now, sometimes if it's up for an open bid, you don't get that kind of say, but when you're able to do direct purchase for some reason, certain situations you can look at vendors that have been used. Okay, here's some situations on the exam for procurement management. A vendor wants to get paid early. So a vendor comes to you and says, my company's out of money. I want to keep working for you, but I got to pay my guys. Not supposed to be paid until next month. But you got to get me some money, right? I need to be paid early so I can continue working for you. Well, you want them to continue working for you, right? So what do?
That's the contract.
You're like, take them to the procurement office and say, pay them. You're going to make sure they get paid. No, the right answer is going to be check the contract. See what the contract says about when you can pay them, if you can pay them early. A vendor has a dispute because sometimes we misunderstand what words mean in the contract. You said this, and that's what I did. And you're like, oh, although that's what it says, that's not what we meant. You have to interpret the sentence this way. They're like, well, I interpreted it this way and I did it. So now we have a dispute. Check and see what the contract says. If there's a dispute, you specifically want to check the arbitration clause. Okay, so there's a test answer for you there. The arbitration clause specifically will tell you part of the contract on how to handle disputes. The vendor provided a different product than what you wanted, so it doesn't meet the requirements. So it's not quality, reject it. Reject it. So always check to see if an answer exists, okay? There is a new question that's popped up on the exam that a vendor has gone out of business because they didn't have money and you couldn't pay them. So they've stopped working. What do you do as a project manager? Vendor closed up shop. What do you do? Now, some people were like, oh, I go talk to the guy. Oh, here's the answer. There was a problem with the contractor. The contractor sent an email to your company and nobody answered them. Been waiting like 4 weeks and nobody answered them. So they're done. They quit you because you're not responding to them. They sent an invoice, you're not paying them, they quit. And you investigate and find out that you had some turnover and they sent an email to a person who's no longer there. So the company never got the invoice. Went to an email box that isn't monitored. What do you do? Now, the person who told me about this question said, look, I would go talk to the vendor. Here's the situation. Come back to work for us. The right answer was, dang, that vendor quit you. You got to go find a new vendor. That was the answer to that question. You got to go find a new vendor. Sorry, the vendor quit you. Oops. Right, so that question has just popped up on the test. Okay.
Options.
procurement bidding, I'm guessing this audience knows what a statement of work is, performance work statement. You've heard those terms before, SAL, PWS. Anybody not familiar with those terms? It's okay if you're not, speak up. All right, so PWS, SAL, it's kind of like trying to articulate the scope of what you want them to do. It may not be the scope of the project, it's the scope of their work, their part of the project. We have a request for quotation, an RFQ. And what an RFQ does is says, we have this work. How much would you charge us to do it? It's really just give me the cost estimate is an RFQ, request for quotation. Just tell me how much money it's going to take to do this. Quotation for bid. So the buyer, which is you, you're going to buy a service from a vendor. So the buyer says, buying the service from the vendor. So you're the buyer and you say, I have work. I have this type of work that I need done. Who can do this work? Who would like to bid on this job? And what you do is getting a list of potential vendors with an IFQ. With an IFB. So you're not looking for any information about what it's going to cost, how you're going to do it, and just looking for companies who can do this. Right. So if you're interested in bidding on this work, let me know. That's the IFB. The RFI, request for information, is when you, the buyer, just wants more information from a seller who's the vendor. Okay, so on the exam, you'll hear about vendors, but most of the questions talk buyer and seller. You're the buyer, your vendors are the sellers. They're selling their service to you, to TRANSCOM. Right. So I need more information from the seller. So maybe you submitted an invitation for bid. Okay, I can't quite tell. You left out some information. Let me ask you for more information. Now, I think most of us, tell me if I'm wrong here, but most of us think of an RFI where we send out a proposal and the vendors ask questions. Like from this, I can't tell if this is really what you want. Clarify the information in your RFQ. And so RFIs go both ways. Vendors will send in questions that then the buyer will answer and send out publicly so everybody else sees those questions and the answer as well too. Request for proposal. This is what I think most people are familiar with. And this is where the buyer will send out, here's the work I have to do. Send me a proposal. So you're not only going to send the cost like you would have in an RFQ. The RFP says, tell me about yourself and why you're better than everybody else, why I should pick you. What's the budget going to be? How are you going to do this work? When do you think you can complete this work? So it's a bigger proposal. It talks about how you're going to accomplish what they want as well as a budget. And then there's the expression of interest where a seller approaches a buyer and says, I understand you do this kind of work. I'd like to do this work for you. That's an expression of interest. The vendor approaches in this case, government personnel. So maybe goes to the small business office, says, I'm a new small business in the area. This is what I can do for TRANSCOM. If you have this kind of work, I'd like you to consider me. I'm a disabled, veteran-owned, woman-owned business. I'm not, but.
Do we need to know these on the test?
Yes, so you'll need to know these terms for the test. You will definitely see SAL, SOW, and performance work statement, and you may see them spelled out, or you may just see PWS. I'm willing to bet you'll see request for quotation on the exam. There is a question about IFBs, multiple questions about RFIs, multiple questions about RFPs, multiple being like 2 or 3. So I had so many questions about contracting on my exam. And at least 10 questions. So some best practices, work with the procurement office. Use pre-approved vendors. And so your procurement office has a pre-approved vendor list, I know. Know those purchase limits and authorities, like, how much does your P card have compared to your boss's purchase card? Do you need co-signers? Some purchases need multiple people to sign, at least two people. And maybe it's the Jader, the directorate has to sign, as well as someone from the comptroller's office, as well as someone from the procurement office. So we have multiple signatures saying this is an authorized purchase. Use a defined bidding process. So a process of, we're going to send out information. We're going to determine the criteria to evaluate our proposals. When the proposals come in by a certain date, we have a committee who's going to use the criteria we've already set, and they're going to evaluate all the proposals. And then we send out who won the proposal. And there's a little bit of time for the people who didn't get the contract to dispute it. Not uncommon. And then there's maybe some overlap with the previous contractor. Maybe there's some time to phase in, and then they start work again. So there's a defined bidding process, from the time we tell someone we have work to do till we get our vendor on board. So we want to make sure we use that process all the time. And that way, when Lisa's uncle gets the contract, they don't go, really? Lisa's uncle? That's who you gave the contract to? I don't think this was a fair process.
They do that anyway.
And they're like, well, you know, Lisa's uncle is a disabled, veteran-owned, woman-owned company who's also Native Alaskan. And so previously woman-owned company, maybe, I don't know, right? Was your uncle now a woman-owned? I don't know. We're getting too far down. We're way out of. And so there's a preference for that, right? And so, although this contract was set aside for a small business, and you're no longer a small business, so we couldn't even consider you for it. So those kind of things happen. But if you have a defined bidding process, you're able to justify why you make the decision. Require an RFP if the threshold is over a certain dollar amount. So don't just do request for proposal, or don't just do who can do this work. And then I'm going to just select from amongst there, right? If it's over a certain threshold, and I don't know what the threshold is for TRANSCOM. For DOD, it's got to be a big threshold, not like a $500 threshold. It would be, you know, sure, 7 digits, some sort, right? So maybe not even that much to get an RFP. Follow escalation procedures for spending increases, and that's those authorities. Pay contracts at a defined time and understand those net payment terms. So net payment terms are, I'm sending you an invoice, and the invoice is for $10,000 for this month, net 30 days, which means you have to pay me within 30 days to get this price. Or it might be 5% net 30 days, which means if you pay me within 30 days, I'll give you a 5% discount. So understand those net payment terms. And then we're just going to cover up this last sentence here. Work with external resources who aligns with your company, right? Aligns with your company. So you don't want it in the news that you're a company who has these values and you hire a contractor who has opposite values, who is known for something opposite of you. You guys know who Joey Chestnut is?
Yeah.
Hot dog eating champion of the world, won several July 4th hot dog eating contests. Joey Chestnut was disqualified this year, wasn't allowed to compete because he signed a contract to be a spokesperson with a impossible meat company, so a non-meat company. So Joey Chestnut's pretty well known as winning Coney Island hot dog eating contest. He's won it multiple times. I don't know, somebody could probably look it up and tell us how many times he's won it and how many times he's competed. But you're not even going to compete this year, because if you're a spokesperson for a non-meat company, and this is sponsored by Nathan's Hot Dogs, which has meat in it somewhere, along with other stuff, but we don't really know, the hot dog. So all kinds of stuff's in it, right? But anyway, we're not going to let you be the winner for a meat company when you're the spokesperson for a non-meat company. Like, oh, we clash here, right? We don't want NRA What?
16 times chat just,
16 times he's won or 16 times he's competed?
16 times he's won,
16 times he's won.
76 hot dogs in 10 minutes.
Right? And now you're going to be a spokesperson for the plant base. You don't get to compete, right? So, PETA will not sign a contract with the NRA. The ethical treatment of animals, right? Protection and ethical treatment of animals is not going to sign anything with the National Rifle Association. So we want contracts that have our values that don't conflict, right? That should be a best practice. Probably won't have a vocal peacekeeping organization sign a big contract with the Department of Defense. An anti-war organization signing a contract with the Department of Defense. I know you got the absolute best software developers working for you. Yeah, you can't work over here. You're not going to get access to our secret information. All right, so we want a formal process. Organizations that are highly regulated, like the government, right? We have formal processes. Is there anything on here that you don't understand? Because you guys live this process. Not everybody works procurement, do they? That's not common for everybody in TRANSCOM. So RFP, we talked about request for proposal, a bidder conference. Bidder conference will be on the exam. A bidder conference is when TRANSCOM holds a public meeting and says, all you government contractors out there, come on to TRANSCOM, come to our event center, and we will tell you about all the contracts we intend to issue this year. We'll tell you about all of our proposals and when we think we're going to send those proposals out publicly. And so come bid on them. Come do business with us. That's a bidders conference. I'm going to tell you what we're doing so that you're informed about it. You can plan for it. You can decide if you even, is there anything for you, for your company? So you don't have to keep looking in the sam.gov system to find out where contracts are and what contracts you have. Okay. So that's a bidder conference. You want to know what a bidder conference is for the exam. And they'll describe the situation and you'll be like, oh, that's a bidder conference. You've invited all these potential vendors to come hear about the contracts you intend to let over the next year. Anything else in that slide you want to talk about? Talk about working closely with the procurement department, procurement office. Yeah. Source selection criteria. So there's a lot of different ways that we decide how we're going to pick the company we want to give a contract to. So we can look at cost, overall cost. How well did they write in their proposal that they really understand the work we do and that they can do it? How well did they tell us what technical expertise they have? They may have submitted resumes with their proposal so that we can see the kind of people they intend to put on the project. And perhaps they're a project manager, and they'll talk a little bit about how they're going to manage the contract and all the people that are on the contract. So they'll talk about all those different kind of things that might be in their proposal that we're going to look for in deciding who's going to be awarded our contract. Key is that you want to have your criteria decided before the proposals show up. Because otherwise we read the first proposal and go, oh, we like that, we like that, we like that. And then we read the next proposal and go, oh, we like that about this company. And suddenly we have all these companies are different and we don't know how to compare them to each other. And so we end up comparing all the companies to each other, picking out that one quality we like rather than using a criteria. And then somebody protests the award of the contract. And now we don't have any way to justify. We know why we picked this. We don't know why we didn't pick you. We can't justify why we did not pick you. And now we're in trouble for that.
Are there like grade sheets kept on this kind of stuff? Like
Um,
score sheets, if you will? Like,
Yes.
Yeah. So
I mean, I've never actually,
anybody sat in on a board where you evaluate the contracts
All the time.
and they give you a not a criteria list, but kind of like a score sheet for
Yep.
each one of them, right? And then you read all these proposals, and some proposals are 75 pages long, maybe. Some of them are shorter, some of them, oh, maybe much bigger than that, actually. You're gonna read through all of those and score them. And then, how many people have scored contracts you've been on? You want probably 10 to 20 people in there, depending on the size of the contract.
Yeah, depending on the size of the contract, but we try to keep it at like 10.
10 people. And who will evaluate them, and then you take all 10 of their score sheets together. And hopefully they don't vary a whole lot, where someone had company A ranked number 1 and somebody else had company A marked number 12. Like, oops, how do we do this, right? So after you score, tell me if I'm right about how this process looks at TRANSCOM, you'll give all that information back to the procurement office. There's a contracting officer there who's going to make sense of how everybody scored that and decide who they're going to pick.
You give it to the KO, and the KO, you make your recommendation, this is best value. The KO then turns around and, does whatever the KO does. 90% of the time, it always goes with whatever the source selection board is going.
What is KO?
Contracting officer. So even though contracting starts with a C, right? KO is, of course, is the contracting.
It was an Army person who started it.
It probably was.
Picking on my people.
Would not shock me. Would not shock me.
All right. Any other questions? Question, thanks for sharing yours. All right, again, we want to use qualified vendors. How do we know if they're qualified? Well, because we used them before. Right, and we know the work that they did. Now, a new company, how do they get on that qualified vendors list? For TRANSCOM, they're going to go talk to the procurement office. How do I get on your preferred vendor list, your qualified vendor list?
Question in the chat. Past performance of seller, does this mean vendor?
Yes. Yes, the seller is the vendor. And sometimes past performance is weighted really heavy. If we're looking for best value, we want to know what's your past performance and how much are you charging us? If we're looking for lowest cost, well, we don't really care. We're just looking for that budget line. You're the lowest on the budget line, you win. But value is tell us really how good you are. And that's a ratio. I almost said quality, but that's not how we want to talk about quality, right? How good you are divided by the cost will tell us a value. And how do we know how good you are? Because you've told us about your past performance, and we believe because you performed well in the past, you will continue to perform well in the future.
There's a big database in the Army or in the DOD that you can go back to vendors and pull all their past performance.
Past performance. Yeah. They got rules about how you state past performance. So if you're a subcontractor, how a lot of companies get started being a subcontractor, you can't really claim past performance for the prime. Even though you did this, it belongs to the prime. So you don't get to claim past, it's tricky. It's not as easy as it seems, but that's not part of this course. But we're going to move on. All right, let's talk about contracts. A contract is a legal working agreement. That's what you need to know for the exam. Contract is a legal working agreement. It gives structure to the relationship. I'm going to do this. In exchange, you're going to do that. Structure of this relationship. And that very bottom line, it can be tailored. Everything can be tailored. Everything can be tailored. Okay, let's talk about different types of contracts. There's generally 3 types of contracts. I think I changed the order. That's on your slide. Shouldn't be a big deal. The firm fixed above plus plus. So these are the 3 types of contracts we're going to talk about. Firm fixed price contract says, I will pay you this much money for you to do this much work. Just that simple. You come mow my yard, I'll give you $100. Doesn't say how long it's going to take you to mow the yard. Hopefully I'll set some sort of standard for it, but you mow my yard, I give you $100. Just that simple, firm fixed price. How many people you hire to come mow my yard? I don't know, that's up to you. However many you can afford, because I'm going to pay you $100. You can keep it all for yourself. You can hire someone and do it in half the time and you each make $50. I don't know, right? You figure that out. Okay, firm fixed price. Who has financial risk with a firm fixed price contract?
The bidder.
Seller.
So let's use government or vendor or buyer seller.
Vendor.
So the vendor, the seller has financial risk. Because I'm just gonna pay you this much money.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If it costs more,
If it costs more, that's on you.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't know, the price of gas went up and now your lawnmower like spilled the gas and you had to buy more. And I don't know what else it is, right? That's on you. So financial risk is on you. On the vendor, on the seller has financial risk, right? So it's up to you to make a profit. If you say, I will mow your yard for $100 and I say, okay, $100, that's a deal. And it took you 4 hours and you're like, I don't know, I can't do $100 in 4 hours. You're gonna have to pay me more. I'm gonna be, well, that's what we agreed to, right? I don't know. My yard's not that big. I don't know why it took you 4 hours, but, right? So we could renegotiate a contract, I suppose, but I don't know if I'll pay you more than, I won't even pay you $100 to mow my yard. Goodness gracious. Okay, fixed price incentive fee. Same thing. You mow my yard, I'll give you $100. However, if you can do it better, faster, cheaper, something, some goal, a carrot I will dangle in front of you. If you can meet this goal, I'll give you more money. Here's an incentive for doing it faster, cheaper, better, something, right? That's the incentive. So on the exam, you'll see firm fixed price, and you may see FFP. You may see FPIF, which would be fixed price incentive fee. So know the letters as well as the name for the contracts. So fixed price incentive fee, there's a fixed price for the work, but there's an incentive there for something. If you can do that, I'll pay you more money. Now there's fixed price economic adjustment. So what happened to construction costs with the pandemic? Crazy increase in construction supplies, lumber, wire, pipes, everything. Supply chain shortage, prices went through the roof. So I know a general contractor who was bidding work and said, this estimate is good for 24 hours. That's it. That's all I can give you an estimate for. Prices are changing so much, so quickly. 24 hours is all this bid is good for. Right? So what if we had a long-term construction project that happens at Scott Air Force Base a lot, right? And so the contractor said, I'll do the work for this much money. And then the pandemic hits and cost has gone crazy. Now the price of lumber has come down, but the price of wire is still like 4 times higher than it was pre-pandemic. It's insane, the cost of wire from someone who has to do electrical work at their house, right? I'm like, oh my goodness, I didn't budget for that, right? So how is that contractor going to afford to pay for all of that? They probably figured in like a 3% inflation rate, but they didn't figure the cost of lumber to 8 times higher, right? So they can go back to the government and we'll like renegotiate, but maybe to stop from renegotiating, we're going to have a contract that's fixed price with economic price adjustment. So as prices go up, maybe it's an inflation rate, or maybe it's tied to something specific. We're going to allow the price that we pay our seller or what our vendor has charged us, right? We're going to allow that to fluctuate up and down. So that's the economic price adjustment. Maybe we bid something during those pandemic times, and now that the price of lumber's come down, we don't want to keep paying the high prices. Come on, that's not what it costs you anymore. So we'll adjust it down a little bit. Okay. So fixed price economic adjustment. The second type of contract is called cost plus. And cost plus is I will reimburse you for your costs, plus something so you make a profit. And there's probably plus a certain percentage or just a certain fee is cost plus. So cost plus fixed fee is I will reimburse you for all of your expenses, plus pay you a fixed fee to cover your overhead, which includes the profit line. So that's cost plus fixed fee. I'm going to reimburse you plus give you a percentage or some fee for overhead. Now, who has financial risk in cost plus fixed fee? The buyer or the seller? The government or the vendor?
Definitely government buyer.
The government, the buyer has financial risk. Because you're like, I'm reimbursing you for what? How much did you pay for that? Like, I could have got that cheaper. I could have went to the GSA catalog and got it cheaper, but all right, their source where they buy it from isn't the GSA catalog. So you're going to reimburse them for what they paid for it, knowing you could have got it cheaper, right? So you have some financial risk associated with cost plus fixed fee. Now that's just not open where they can, buy from their uncle that jacks up the prices and they make more money there, right? There's some controls we put on that, but basically that's what cost plus fixed fee is. Okay, cost plus incentive fee, same thing. I'm going to reimburse you for your cost. I'm going to pay you a little for overhead. It's just standard in there. But if you can do it faster, cheaper, better, some incentive, I'll pay you an incentive fee. Now, the bottom one, cost plus, is also has another fee called an award fee. And the award fee can also be attached to a firm fixed price contract as well, too. But the award fee is like, oh, I want to give you a bonus. I like you guys. There's a little extra money for working with us. Now, the incentive fee is tied to something specific. And if you do it, you get the fee. The award fee is not. If I feel like giving it to you, you get it. If I don't, you don't. So the vendor's like, look, I did an outstanding job for you. I got everything done early. Everything was great. You accepted everything the first time. You didn't reject anything. And you're like, yes, you did a good job. Well, there's an award fee clause in our contract. Oh. There's nothing a vendor can do for the award. It's completely arbitrary. It's subjective whether the seller wants to give that award fee or not. Right. So it's there as something, a little bonus, a tip that a vendor could work for, but it's completely subjective whether they get it or not. Unlike the incentive fee that's written in there, you meet this objective, you get it. You don't get it, you take them to court and you get your money. An award fee, you don't get it, you take them to court and it'll just get tossed out because there's nothing that says that they have to give it to you. Now, the third contract, called time and material, is really, it's also called time means, but it's I will reimburse you for your labor. And it's almost always labor. Sometimes there's a little bit of material, perhaps travel. I'll reimburse you for travel. But that's really about all, right? So it's about cost reimbursement, fixed fee. I'm just reimbursing you for the time. So we probably know, I know that you have people who make this much money per hour. So it allows me to have a definite budget, and that's what we think of the fixed fee. But cost plus is I'm reimbursing you because sometimes someone takes time off and so they don't have hours that are reimbursable. Right, so I'm not reimbursing you for those hours, but we reimburse you for the hours that you work, and I'm able to have a budget that I can plan on.
Is that how most personnel, like contracted employees are?
A
Being paid?
lot of contracts that are just people
Mhm.
are time and material, so I'm reimbursing you for the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's nothing that says you can't do a combination. So a prime contractor may get a firm fixed price contract from the seller, the government, and then they do a cost plus or a time and material subcontract, a contract with their subcontractors. So although the main contract is firm fixed price, the contract to their subcontractors is time and material. That's not so uncommon.
Our EADE contract, Julie, most of the task orders are firm fixed, whereas the engineering piece is time and material.
Really? So there's a piece of the contract that's time and
Yep.
material, the rest of it's firm fixed.
Yep.
Because it's on the high.
This part of the contract is, the whole thing is IDIQ.
So by task order.
So the part that's FFP has people working those parts as well too, right? We should talk about that. I want to know why. What's the difference with this piece then?
It,
Why?
it was a government preferred on why the engineering task order was time and material versus, I think we're the only ones too.
Yeah.
So
Are you more expensive than the others?
Maybe a little bit.
You guys only make what, like 250 a year or something like that? Right?
She makes 3.
300 a year. Huh, interesting. That's uncommon to have it mixed like that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Usually the whole contract is just one. Okay. So the agile world wants their own kinds of contracts. And so these are other types of contracts that can be used in either a traditional approach or an agile approach. The other types can also be used in either. But PMI is like, this is what you're mostly going to find with agile. Not sure that's completely true, but a multi-tier structure, because with agile, we talked about IDIQ gives you flexibility. I don't know exact quantity that I need, right? So a multi-tier structure gives you that flexibility as well too. There are some things in the contract that are set, like I want a warranty, the arbitration clause. A lot of those are the kind of clauses in the contract, but the labor piece of it can vary. So I'll reimburse you for the labor, but I want all these other pieces in there that are going to be consistent across the whole contract. So that's a multi-tier. Part of it is set, part of it fluctuates. So that's different than the situation you guys just talked about. Emphasize value deliver. So that's based upon the value that I'm getting. So the deliverables at those milestones. So I'm going to, the contract is set so that I get deliverables at certain milestones. At that point, the vendor is most likely to invoice the seller for here's the work I've done for you. I can't think of an example at all.
Emphasize value.
So if this company is not able to create the working product you want, they don't get paid. Right? So you got to create something and give it to us if you want paid. You're going to take on this project, but if you can't do it, you got to give it to me to get paid. Right? So you don't get paid if you don't do it. So I don't know anybody who uses that kind of contract actually. Fixed price increments. So because we don't know exactly all the work we need to do, and this is again mostly labor, it's here's what we're going to charge for this release. And here's what we charge for this release. And so that's by increment then. I'm going to figure out about what the amount of work that we need to do and the dollar amount for different increments. And then not to exceed time and materials. So that's not an uncommon contract to use in any approach either. So it's time and material. I'm going to reimburse you for time and your material, but not to exceed this point. So I know that you have 10 people working on this contract, or I believe to do this work, it needs 10 FTEs. So if you want 10 full-time people, awesome. If you want 20 people to work 20 hours a week, that's fine too. But I'm going to reimburse you for the equivalent of 10 full-time people. So I'm reimbursing you for time and material not to exceed what I would have for 10 full-time. So it just caps time and material. Okay, other types of contracts. The only one of these you're going to see on the exam is team augmentation, where I may not hire a company to do the whole work for me. I just need a particular expert to come work with my team for a little bit. So I'm doing a contract for an expert to come here for a week and work with us, advise us, that kind of thing, and then they're off again. So that's a team augmentation contract. The items that you typically find in a contract with a description of the work, EWS or the SAL. So it's not the entire scope, it's the part of the scope you want that contractor to do. The responsibilities and authorities of all the parties involved. You do this, I do this. states that we want things, pricing, payment terms, warranty guarantees. Now, there's a difference between a warranty and a guarantee, but you're not going to be asked that on the exam. Nuance difference that used to be a question, it's gone now. So warranties or guarantees, termination clause, arbitration clause. Anything about intellectual property, anything about confidentiality. So how many people in here signed a non-disclosure agreement that, yeah, what you learn here, you can't go tell other people, right? Online, I'm sure you signed NDAs as well too, non-disclosure agreements.
That's NDA for like a security clearance. You get security clearance,
And I say it again, that
you get your security clearance, you have to sign.
sign an NDA. Okay, the items with the little stars by them are in the question about items you'll find in the contract. Okay, so it would be, here's the situation, where in a contract do you find that? And you're like, oh, you're talking about a warranty. So you'd find that in the warranty clause. A vendor has a dispute. Where do you find out how you handle a dispute? Oh, that's in the arbitration clause. The vendor did not complete all of the work. They said they did. Where is it that you would show a vendor the work that they're required to do? Oh, well, that's the description of work. That's the PWS. So those kind of questions beyond the exam. Seek legal advice if something happens. So there's a description of a warranty, a waiver. So the warranty is, a promise that this is what I'm going to do. So when I offer a warranty, it's a promise that I'm going to do this work. The waiver is, I forfeit my right to this. I'm going to say, don't need it, cancel it out, forfeit, don't need that. I'm going to waive that off. That's the waiver. The breach of contract is when we've agreed to do something and one party doesn't do it. So that's a legal problem with a contract that can make it go to court. We agreed to do this, you didn't do it. I paid you in advance, give the money back, right? Breach of contract. Cease and desist. Cease means stop. Desist means don't start again. So cease and desist letter would be you're using my copyrighted material. I own it. It's me. You can't have it. So I will send you a cease and desist letter that's kind of a warning. Stop doing it. And if you stop now, there'll be no more legal action. If you keep doing it, we're going to court because I own this. So I meant to look up the bar because I like to tell local people here about this bar in West St. Louis County. Nope, in St. Charles County. There's a little microbrewery in St. Charles County that made a Frappuccino beer. And Starbucks sent them a cease and desist letter. We own the word Frappuccino. Wow. And they said, that's ridiculous. Starbucks doesn't own the word Frappuccino. It's a word. And Starbucks said, nope, seriously, cease and desist. We own the word Frappuccino. And they went, oh, son of a gun. Starbucks owns the word Frappuccino. So they had to change the name of their beer. So you can now go to this little bar in St. Charles County, or microbrewery in St. Charles County. You can look up the news story and find their name because I forgot to do it for this class. And you can order the F word beer. That's what it's now called, the F word beer, because they can't say Frappuccino anymore. But there it is. So that's probably better for them than Frappuccino beer anyway, right? The F word beer.
Find that with the story, got a legend.
Yeah. It really helped their business for a little bit, being in the news about all of that. They were in the news across the country. Okay. Manage contract changes and resolve problems. You're going to have multiple questions on the exam that talks about how to manage vendors. And if there's a problem, what do you do? And the answer is going to be go check the contract. Right. And now you have a contractor who really does need to be paid. You check the contract, it says they're paid at this point in time and we're not there yet. What are you going to do? Your answer is I'm going to walk them to the procurement office and I'm going to say, hey, procurement officer, like to keep this guy working with us. What can you do? And you hand them off. But first, you're going to check the contract and see what it says. And then, legal problems arise with contracts all the time and you can seek help from your general counsel, from the attorneys, and then sometimes you just gotta let the attorneys handle it all. Contested changes and potential constructive changes, including lack of agreement on compensation, lack of agreement that a change has occurred. So those two situations, because change could happen. You need to change something in the contract. So here's a company that has a contract and you're like, I changed my mind, I need this. And that company's like, hold on, I did the contract based on this. And now you want to change it? You got to give me an opportunity to rebid. Like, this requires something different from me. I'm not going to keep doing it for the same cost. You got to let me rebid it, right? So I made a deal with TRANSCOM to teach a class for 20 people. They said, we have 37. I'm like, hold on. And then he said, can we do one more? And I said, oh, Chris, I'd have to rebid this contract now. 38 people, I bid for 20. He's like, oh, never mind, someone dropped out, so we're good. I'm like, yeah, we're good. We're good. You're my friend, Chris, we're good. So, but I was like, dude, I think I messed up here. I don't know what I was thinking. All right, so if you can't resolve working with the vendor, you can't come to an agreement, you're going to escalate that up and you'll escalate it according to what's in. This says an alternate dispute resolution, but it's going to be the arbitration clause in the contract. Whatever the arbitration clause says, the arbitration clause is the alternate dispute resolution. Because without the alternate dispute resolution, it means you're just suing them and going to court. And that's expensive. Let's go to a negotiator instead of going to court, because that's going to cost both of us money that neither one of us wants to spend. So if we can negotiate and come up with a solution to this, let's do that first. And last resort is going to court. Again, I had like 10 questions on my exam about procurement processes. But TRANSCOM, DOD, highly regulated, procurement's really involved in everything you do with contracting and procurement. Anybody here do anything, anybody online do anything with contracts on their own without going through procurement? Anybody here have a government P card, purchase card? What's your limit on your government purchase card?
Actually, I take that.
Like not now? So I had a government purchase card that looked exactly like a personal credit card that I had. That was awful for me because one time I pulled it out by mistake and I was like, oh, but I tapped it. I'm like, oh, wrong card, stop. And it was instantly declined because my card wasn't even turned on, right? But because I tapped it, even when my card wasn't turned on, because it only turned on when I traveled, right? It wasn't turned on. I got called in front of the general. I'm like, really? I'm like, here's my personal card and my government card. See, I just happen to have them together. Rarely do that. And they were like, yeah, whatever. You. Oh, it's you. Go away. But I mean, that's a big deal, right? It was a big deal of when you can use what. Don't violate this.
A lot of people do that. And so that's why now, at least for the Air Force, you are required to keep that inside your office in a binder. So when you get ready to go purchase, you go to the office, get that binder and you go. Was that, I think.
Otherwise, you don't keep it with.
Yeah. Otherwise you don't keep it because I think.
Because people like me.
Yeah. At my last place, there was
Travel card
an
there, yeah.
NCO who thought it was his own card and he was just swiping and it was the government money and they caught him. And now he's a civilian because he kept on swiping and like, oh, I thought that was my card. Since when you had a $10,000 credit limit. So,
Oh, was there something online? I thought.
Yeah, John said he wrote Gubby card on the GTC.
Yeah, like
Like a marker.
personal
Yeah.
government travel card.
Yeah.
Oh, to make sure it was,
Is that the same thing as
it's
purchase
a
card?
different.
no,
separate-
purchase
the
card and then travel
for
cards are
you to
different.
travel, the purchase cards for you to purchase things for the unit.
Usually the spending limit's a lot higher on the purchase.
Yeah. So I'm old. So we had one card that I used for both whenever I had a card.
Elena probably has one.
Moles.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have. Oh.
No.
okay. I know.
Purchase card.
Then, ready for break? I'll add it for a little bit.
I was gonna say,
All right, let's take a 10-minute break. Let's come back at 1 and we'll
I understand.
on. There's Paul online. All right. We'll come back and talk about resources next.
Yeah. All mine are blue, like all my regular debit cards are
Oh,
blue.
yeah.
And then I leave the sticker on this one. I gotta grab it. I'm like, oh, no, that one's,
Let's keep on the other side of the wall.
yeah.
My regular use ones, my non-regular.
Yeah. So yeah, it's in here. Like I have to like go for it. Like, wow.
I mean, even when I used to travel a lot, I didn't really keep it in my wallet except when I was on travel. Like,
My DTS people always get mad because I just use my own debit card.
Yep.
And
I
that must-
prefer doing that. I prefer
Yeah.
only doing a travel claim for the rental car, the hotel, and the
Yep.
flights.
I do the
And
same
everything
thing.
else.
Anything else, like you'll pay me what you give me.
Yep.
And I've even put the hotel on my personal before and gotten scolded. I'm like,
Yeah, they-
I bet. I bet.
Oops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take up the video. It's like literally like, film like, you know. Yep. Are you eating around? Julie, did you see the text message? from
Yeah.
Preston?
Oh, what? Oh, yeah, I just looked at that. And I was looking at your F word here, article.
Yeah. I put it in the chat. It's
That one.
so. Anyway, I'll give you the link, but it's Exit 6 Brewery in Conway.
Exit 6 Brewery.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it from.
So do you want to try to close on the 31st? I have to talk to, the condo attorney and see if money can be available.
Well, yeah, it's even better, but it's like I can just get stuff out there. Make sure I can get the garage, because I got to do that, because they're hot, they're already cold. That's till tomorrow at night.
They want it sooner.
I can empty it and done with it tomorrow. Have to move.
Oh,
It's easy, it's easy to unload from,
gonna go up tonight.
if that's the
Take the
case.
car, can I take U-Haul up tonight?
We'll take the car. We take a car. Okay. I'll take the car to look, yes. Yeah. And then from there, I'll assess and
All right, are we back online?
Maintainers that maintain.
Have we done a better job today of not confusing you online? Oh, I hope today has been better for you. Okay, I hope I have not done so much of the,
Yes, in all caps.
okay, thanks. So before I was like just pointing to things and in the room you could tell what I was pointing to, but online they're like, I have no idea what she's saying because without, can't see me pointing, you know, I'm like, all right, I'll try to do better. Okay, let's talk about resources. When PMI says resources, they mean people. On the exam, when you say resources, they mean people. If they mean supplies and tangible things, they'll say physical resources.
You mentioned that before.
Physical resources are the tools. Resources are people. The J1 is human resources. Robots don't count. They're physical resources. Humans are the resources. Okay, so let's talk about resources. Here we are on the agenda, moving right along. It's like we're getting close to the end, but we still have 50% of the test to cover. That last part's pretty heavy. Okay, so resources are people, physical resources are all those other things. PMI's philosophy, value and empower the internal human resources that you have that leverage all the value that's out there for the people who currently don't work for you, so you can have the best team, the best equipment possible. So let's talk about the resource management plan. We're going to make a plan for how we're going to acquire, assign, manage, control, and close out our project with resources. So our resource management plan includes how to identify the resources that we need. So I, a previous life, worked for a hotel, a large hotel. We had about 1,000 employees. And at the time, say I was the employment manager. And so my job was to hire all these people. And so we had a new director of facilities, building maintenance guy came to me and said, what do you have? And I said, well, I'm looking for 2 people for you. He said, that's not what I want. I just talked to my whole team and I have people who have these skills. I have an electrician. I have a plumber. I have a carpenter. I have someone who repairs the elevator in the building because it was 13 stories high, 14 stories high. Oh, it's 18 stories high, but there's no 13th floor, right? So 17 stories high, I have a building. So this elevator, there are multiple elevators. So I have someone who operates all of that, but I don't have this trade. I'm missing this trade. Like I have an upholsterer, reupholstered all the furniture. I'm missing this trade though. So I don't need 2 general handyman people. I need you to find me someone who has this particular trade. So what we did was a skills assessment. This is what I need for my team. This is what I currently have, and here are my gaps, right? And that's what you want to do in building your team as well. So that's identifying resources. You're going to look and say, what skill sets do I need on my team? Technical skills and soft skills. How do I acquire them? Where do I find them? On my team, what are the roles and responsibilities going to be? Do I have team leads? Am I organizing my team that way with team leads? So I looked at my WBS. I have 5 chunks. I've got 5 team leads, or maybe not. Maybe I just have a team where everybody's working together, right? So how am I going to organize my team? That's going to be in your management plan. Perhaps an org chart will be in my management plan, but I may have just my team's organization in my management plan. So I probably haven't even got anybody on my team. I'm just making the plan for them yet. So as I get them, I know where to plug them in. And so when someone comes and says, hey, this person I'm going to assign to your project, you're going to be like, I need someone with, this is my gap. And they're like, well, this is the person you have. Teach them to fill that gap right there, right? So I know in the military, you get people assigned to you and you have to figure out how to make them fit into where you need them to be. So our project team resource management, so people management, how we're going to manage the people that we have and how we're going to release them. So we're going to talk about as our project draws down, you need fewer resources, which means fewer people, as well as physical resources. You're going to release those people so they can go work on someone else's project where they're needed. Right? So my team no longer, we're coming to the end. Most of our tasks are done. I don't need this skill set on my team anymore. So instead of them just sitting around, or there's not even enough work to cross-train them, I'm going to release them and let them go work for someone else. Just like the money that you don't need anymore, right? We're kind of release that back to the organization. So things the government doesn't like to do, but as good stewards of our resources, that's what we do. Our training management team is going to also include training, what our training plan is, what I want training for my team to have. Different methods that I'm going to use to develop my team, because we're going to think about having a growth mindset. We're going to get that when we start talking about leadership. How do we continue to grow our team? How do we continue to become better? That constant, continual improvement, continual process improvement, that applies to our team members as well too. So what's my plan to continue to develop my team? How many of you have that for where you work right now? All right, so I know what our development plan is for all of the people on my team. They know where they're going, why they're going to train on what to train on. Very good. And our recognition plan. How do we recognize our employees? How do we thank them for what they do? How do we give them rewards? What is that? What is even available for me to use to recognize them? So we'll put that in our resource plan as well. And then as we start getting our team members, how do we assign them to a project? What roles and responsibilities do they have? We'll start putting together our roster contact sheet. And then putting together your team, think about experience, knowledge, and skills and attitude, soft skills as well as technical skills, right? So you don't have to listen to this if you want. But I always tell a story about our son, Mark, who just graduated from college, got a degree in acting, which means as soon as he figures out what restaurant he's going to work in, he's off the payroll. I'm like, no, I'm like, I hope he has a successful career in acting, right? But my joke, he got a degree in acting, which means he's going to work in restaurants. So this kid to me, right? This young man now, you want on your team. He's not going to be able to help you with much technical stuff. He'll do what you tell him to do. You're going to have to tell him to do it, right? But he has an ability to pull people together to make a team like no one else I've seen. Amazing. He's like the glue of a team. People want to be in a team with him. He just has some ability to like pull people together. He once had a girlfriend who told me he meets someone and like 5 minutes later they walk down the hall and they have a secret handshake. How did you do that so quickly, right? He just has that ability to pull people together, right? And add energy to the group, right? So he's a good person to have on the team. You just have to keep telling him what you want him to do though, right? But he brings some other talents to a team that's beyond just the technical skills. So don't forget to think about those things as well too, because he needs a job. No. But, right? So don't overlook those qualities. So that's what that board's about there. The talent war is hire people for their characteristics and teach them those technical things. So this is an example of a resource calendar. Looks to me like a schedule. When are your resources available? There's an example that says, oh, I have these resources, which are people's names, and they're going to be here during this time. So it helps me coordinate when I get certain work done, when my resources are available. Again, it looks to me just like a schedule. You might call it our resource calendar. But if you take this resource calendar and you have physical resources, and sometimes we have physical resources that are only available for a certain period of time. So maybe we're sharing it with another team. Or maybe we have a piece of equipment that we don't use all the time. So we've contracted for its use during a certain period of time only. So you take those physical resources and you lay them over top of your resource calendar. And now you have something where you really can manage. I need this person with a skill set who will use this piece of equipment. And when I put them both on the same resource calendar, I can see that the person who needs to use that equipment is going to be here when my. So documents resource availability with the resource calendar. So we have a term, we had two terms when we talked about scheduling, that we have a mismatch between our resources and when we were going to do tasks. So we talked about smoothing and leveling. Smoothing and leveling when we have to move around the tasks that we have based upon the resources that we have, people, okay? When you do a resource calendar and you put physical resources and human resources together on the calendar, then you're able to tell where you need to do smoothing, where you need to do leveling, and how to do smoothing. Like what task can I put here based upon who in my team is available, right? So the resource calendar helps with smoothing and leveling. The difference between those two, just to remind you, is smoothing, you're not going to miss your deadline. Your project stop date's still going to be the same. You're moving tasks around. But in leveling, sometimes you miss it. Some tasks end up taking longer just because of the resources you have available, and you end up moving things to the right. Project deadline moves to the right. All right. So this is a tool. Someone asked about this the first class, I think, someone online. A tool that we use to assign roles and responsibilities to our team members. And we call this a RACI chart. RACI stands for responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. So every task we have, we're going to assign someone to be responsible to do that task. The R is the person or people who are going to actually do the task. The A, the accountable person, is the person who is responsible for making sure that task gets done. That's the accountable person. Now, PMI says you have as many R's as you need to get the task done, right? But the military unity of command, you have one person accountable. Just pick one person who's responsible for making sure the work gets done. So every task should have just one and only one A. It can have as many R's as you need. C is consulted. Who's the person that if you need help, you can reach out and consult with? Or who's the person you need to, you need to give them information, right? Either way, but it's a consulting relationship. And then I is informed. Who are the people who get your reports? Who are the people you're going to talk to, give status updates about your project, right? So a RACI chart is a type of responsibility assignment matrix, a RAM. That's the title of the slide, responsibility assignment matrix. A RACI is a type of RAM. It's the only type of RAM we're going to talk about. All right, so here's what a RACI chart looks like. In this particular chart, we have the activities on the left-hand side, and we have titles across the top. So we can see in prepare bill of materials, the project team is responsible. They have the R. The project manager has an A, they're accountable. And then the department manager is who you consult with about this task. For prepare the estimate, we have the team members are responsible for doing it. The program manager is accountable for making sure it gets done. And we have our project sponsor and the department manager who both get informed about the estimate. So that's what a RACI chart looks like. You can create it however you want. And I think I took out the rest of the RACI charts. There's just this one in here, right? So you can have activities down one side and every name of your team across the top. You have your team members down the left side and all your activities across the top. However you want to organize your RACI chart. Again, anything can be tailored, okay? But for the exam, R is who's responsible. You want to know what RACI stands for the exam. Responsible, accountable, consulted, informed. And that you can have as many R's as you need to get the task done, but only one A per task. Okay. So you see not every task has a C, not every task has an A. That's okay. procurement documents, someone else that's not on this chart's accountable for that one. So responsible, accountable, consult, and inform. I think we already talked about all of that. Okay, let's talk about growing employees. And PMI says you want to strive for T-shaped employees. And T-shaped employees say your employees will come with a skill set. So you've hired them because they have a particular skill set that they know really well. They're pretty deep in that subject. But what else could they know to help out with your team? So your team needs, well, I'll stick with my little chart here, 5 different kinds of skills. We have a database design person, a UX UI person. We have, what's missing? Coding in the middle, software engineer. We have someone about Java, and we have testing and documentation. So the software engineer, very deep in that area. But as we start working together, I want my team member to know a little bit about UX UI too. User interface, right? Looking at it from a user's point of view. I want them to learn a little bit about database design. So they start building some depth in other areas. So not very deep, pretty shallow at first, right? But they know a little bit about the other areas. And that's where we start to get a team. Pretty deep in one area, and then know a little bit about all the other areas on the team. Now, eventually, we'll start playing bingo, but blackouts, where they can get deep in a lot of different areas, right? Not just one area. So if you're missing a resource, you have someone else on your team who can help out. They may not be able to do as much or as fast, but at least work won't completely stop. So think about building T-shaped employees deep in one area, but they start to learn about the other areas as well too. So then they can assist the whole team. Okay, understand what a T-shaped employee is? Doing okay online? So how do we make T-shaped employees? Training. So here's a make or buy decision. Do we offer training in-house? So we let our team members train each other. Or do we actually send someone away for training or have a training team come in? So again, time, cost, and quality generally affects our make or buy decision. Is there an ongoing need? If there's an ongoing need for a certain skill, why not send someone to training and bring it in-house, right? If it's not an ongoing need, then maybe you just contract it out, have an expert come in for a week or two, and then that's the cheaper option that way. How steep is the learning curve? So I'm going to send someone away for training, and then they're going to come back, and it's going to take them a year before they get really good at this. Well, if my project is 5 years long, that's probably okay. If my project is 6 months long and it takes them a year to get really good, well, okay, I probably isn't going to do any good to training. They're only going to become so proficient, and then they won't use it again, right? And they'll forget all that skill. So maybe we don't make it at that point then. And then treat knowledge as an asset. Think of knowledge as something tangible, and it belongs to the organization. So when we talked about turnover causing problems, we lose that knowledge because rarely do we think about someone having knowledge that belongs to the organization that we want to keep within the organization. So how many of you work in a place that has a formal channel for people to share their knowledge with others? Nobody, we don't do that very well, but why not? Right? Because then when people turn over, it's okay because we have organizational knowledge. We don't just have the individual knowledge. So one of the things I always questioned about TRANSCOM is we have this wonderful section of war gamers who go off and test all, they go to war games where they make up situations. And if this happens, then what? And if we do this, then what happens? And if we do this, then what happens? And there are a couple people there who have been for a while who are fabulously knowledgeable of all of this information, and none of it's on the GOC floor. Like what? Like these guys know a lot, but how do we get that into the organization? How do they get what they've tested and said, this is a good idea to work out? How do we get that into our plans? And then how do we turn those plans into operations? Right? We don't. These people know a lot. There's no channel to make that an organizational asset. It stays as an individual asset. So when you think about knowledge as something tangible, like any other piece of equipment that we have, you start treating it a little bit differently, right? We want to capture that knowledge and somehow catalog it, inventory it. Now I have a whole process in my head as if we're doing physical stuff, right? Where do we store it? How do we keep it? How do we make sure it's the latest version? All those kind of things, right? So if you think of knowledge as that way, you start treating it a little bit differently. But that's a test question. Treat knowledge as an asset. T-shaped employees, test question. Make or buy decision, test questions. And then we release resources when they're no longer needed, test question. Such as when we're closing out a project or closing out a phase and that skill level isn't needed on our team anymore, we release it so it can go, it can go help on another project. Our resource can help out with another project. Right now, if you're working agile, and we like keeping that team together, they grow close, the team is empowered, they all have their roles and procedures on how they work. And when I say, you gotta let people go when you no longer need them, I get scrum masters who are like, no, that's not what we do. We keep our team together to the end. Okay. Now, when we get to leadership, we're going to talk about people when projects close, when people leave, there's a process that you have to go through to say goodbye and detach. So the military is great for this. We do hail and farewells. We do a formal greeting, formal goodbye. We go out to lunch when it's their last day. We get little awards when it's the end of their time with us, right? So you need that sort of process. So you think about when you're closing the project and you're letting team members go, when it's one at a time, right? There's a process and you want to think through that process so that we let people go the right way. So it's not so dramatic for everybody. Okay, questions about resources? All right, let's talk project integration. We've talked each of these plans, with the exception of the compliance plan, that may be the 11th of the 10. But we've talked through each of these 10 project plans or the 10 component management plans that make up the project plan. So hopefully you've picked up buzzwords and tools. So when you write your application, you can use words from all of those areas, tools and responsibilities you have there. But we write these plans simultaneously, right? They're not written one at a time because we find out all this information as we're talking about one, information about the others pop up. So we start writing them, but now we got to put them all together. Here's where we are on the agenda. But why, I ask you and ask those online, why do we want to take a deliberate time to integrate all of these plans that we've been writing?
Is to make sure that they work together, that they're, if you're writing them separately, you want to make sure that they don't contradict or.
Yes, you want to make sure you haven't written something in one plan that doesn't contradict another plan. Yes, sir. Online, sir.
Ensure there's a smooth handoff and the effort and resources are validated. Or make sure everything is aligned.
Line is a good way to say it.
They're all dependent on each other. Identify dependencies. They're all different comments.
Those are all great comments. And I just want to add, we want to identify any gaps we have. Dependencies, conflicts, gaps. So we take a holistic approach to our project plan to see where we've missed something when we've thought about them topic by topic. So we take a holistic view to identify gaps, contradictions, dependencies, everything that you just said. And we're going to fix it before the project starts. That's the idea. So we want a good project plan that's going to be written before we start the project. Again, we're talking a traditional approach because you can't make a plan with an agile approach. Right? So we start to understand the connections between all of the pieces of the project plan. None of them exist in a silo. We get to align our efforts and coordinate our project better. And as the project manager, you own this. Sorry, can't blame anybody else. You own the project plan. You get to write it. You can't delegate it. That's a test question. So project integration is fairly easy when detailed plans can be written, but we don't write detailed plans with an agile approach, right? So with an agile approach, every sprint planning meeting, time we talk user stories, sprint reviews, daily stand-ups, retrospectives, we end up talking about all these pieces. It just comes out. We end up talking about how we're going to improve and move forward, what we did. We end up talking about schedule. I don't know if we talk about budget so much. We talk about resources, skills we have and what we need. We talk about how well we did with task, how well we did in sizing our backlog items. We talk about risk. We talk about communication. We talk about stakeholder management. Like all those pieces come up in every meeting with in an agile approach. So we don't have to worry about writing each plan. It's constantly integrated in agile. And then if we have hybrid, well, we have a plan for the parts that we know, and the parts that we don't know work agile. It's just, this agile process, it gets talked about constantly. So it's continuous integration with an agile approach. Okay. Questions about integration? Talk a little bit about change management because it doesn't fit anywhere else in the course. So I talk about it with integration. So integration requires change. Change is going to happen. So we're going to talk about change at this point in time. Plan for change. We make a plan. We don't want to change, but we have to plan for change. It's going to happen in there. And everybody is afraid of change because nobody wants to feel vulnerable, and change brings feelings of vulnerability. And especially you type A people in the military who don't want your peers to know that you don't really know what you're doing because it's obvious they do know, right? We just hate that looking around and they seem to know what they're doing and I have no clue or what, right? And I like what I do now and you're going to change it all on me? And what do I have to do? Like, you haven't even told me why and what this is about, right? So change brings about lots of human issues that we get to deal with change. Everybody wants to know how it's going to affect them. We start off by telling them how it's going to benefit them. So change comes from, we have to make changes to our plan because sometimes we have inaccurate estimates, right? They're just guesses. It's the best guess we can do at the time, but sometimes we don't guess very well, right? So it's off. Partway through our project, we get new regulations. We have new compliance standards now, right? We missed a requirement. Oops, got to add that in now. And that's going to create some other changes down the road, some other rippling effects, right? Or maybe our specifications changed. We got new stakeholders, which gave us new requirements or new expectations, new acceptance criteria, right? So that all creates change. This is on the test, the types of changes that we have. So sometimes we have changes because we have to correct something we did. Right? So we've done something that wasn't right. We got to back up and correct it. Sometimes we're making changes to prevent us from having problems. So there are preventative actions that we have to take. Sometimes we have to fix a defect, and sometimes we just create modifications, which would be to our baseline, right? Our scope, create modifications for. So you want to know those 4 types for the exam. All right, and trying to implement change. Now, TRANSCOM has a whole change management directorate almost, right? A whole group of people who works on change management. Do they call it process improvement? Is there a different process improvement group at TRANSCOM? Is it all in change management? There's a change management group on the 3rd floor. Okay, we're going to say they're about process improvement as well too, but change management. So that group is to understand the culture of TRANSCOM, which is a military organization, but mostly senior people. So they think a lot. They're not just, E1s, 2s, and 3s that just wait to be told what to do. They really want to know the why behind things, be involved in decision making. So that's a slightly different culture than you find in a lot of military units, right? It's a very senior command. So how you make change when you have a very senior level command is a little bit different than how you're going to make change when people just do what they're told to do. So assess the culture, evaluate the impact this change is going to make. Now, that's in a lot of test questions now. Somebody wants to make a change. The first thing you're going to do is analyze the impact of that change. Now, actually, it may say the first thing you're going to do is write it in the change control log. Someone wants to make a change, write it up, log it in the change control log, and then analyze the impact that it may make to your project. And then you're going to continually monitor to see what impacts this is going to make to, or what it could make, what it has made to your project and the organization. So organization change requires individual change because quite honestly, there's nothing to an organization but the individuals. You remove the individuals and there's nothing left of an organization, really. It's a building, but it's not an organization. So it's individuals that make up an organization. So if you want to change the organization, you change the people, right? So ADKAR is just a model that helps for change. A is awareness that there's a change. D, the desire. K, the knowledge. A, the ability for people to practice their new behaviors and R, to reinforce those new behaviors so that change sticks, right? You've probably seen, and I know people have said, oh, there's a change, just wait. It'll change again, right? Not even going to do this change because by the time I do it, they're going to want some other change. So I'm just going to let this one slide by and I'll catch the next one, right? I've heard of that said there, right? So ADKAR, for the exam, know that ADKAR is about change management. And I don't even know if you have to know what it stands for. I would know what it stands for, but it's associated with change management. So this is a model for how you get people to change. You make them aware of the need for change. We're going to make your life better. This is how it's going to benefit you. We create a desire to do the change. So we start with an email campaign 3 months ahead of time. You're getting an email about this change is coming. This is going to make your life good. We're going to market it. Things are good for you. This is how we're going to implement the change. You should expect to go to training. You're going to learn these kind of things. We're going to give you a manual. Someone's going to come help you make this kind of change, whatever it is, how we're going to do the change. And then we're going to give you the opportunity to learn it and practice it, and then we'll reinforce it. So change brings opportunities as well as issues, which means good stuff and bad stuff. So you want to constantly be monitoring what the change has done. That's all this slide is really saying. So every time you make a change, you're going to have risk and issues. Look at your stakeholder register, all those tools you have, something's going to be affected by the change that you make. Okay, in a predictive traditional approach, we have a process for making change. So we control change really tightly. We do that through a change control board. So we create a process that's going to lead to our change control board will be part of the process, actually. So we start off with who can make changes? How do we make changes? You fill out a form to nominate a change. Like, what's the process for this change? Like, what is ER? Required a change plan or process. That's what I meant. I really meant to require the change plan or a process more than a plan. It's a process. I was like, did I miss a word there? Like, no, I really didn't mean to go like, process. Okay. So I'll let you read through that. What I want you to know really is more about the change control board that's going to be on the test. So on the test, nearly everything goes through a change control board. That's what you need to know to answer some questions. Nearly everything goes through a change control board. You need a process for who nominates, how they nominate. You need a change log, so you can log all of that. What's that template look like? That's all part of the process. just that slide. So here's the change control board. The board members are appointed in writing. I don't know how many are on your board, 3 people, 5 people? I don't know if members of the Board of Governors are on your change control board. As the project manager, are you on the change control board or are you just required to attend the meetings? I don't know. You get to decide. So you decide how big it is, who's on the change control board. How often do they meet? They meet once a week, once a month? Do they meet just whenever there's a change for them to consider? Like, I don't know. You're going to write that into your process there. Okay.
This is probably nitpicky, but you're saying change control board on the slide that says change management board. On the test, is there a specific one?
No, in fact, you may see both on the test, actually.
Okay, cool.
I think. Yeah, so in scenarios, it may say something about a change management board. But there are questions that say change control board or CCB. So I'm like, because they use CCB, change control board. But if they talk about a change management process, it's this process. But it'll be a change control board. Think about CCB. So you have a board, it's appointed in writing. You decide how often they meet, when they're going to meet, what their procedures are. Somebody wants to make a change. You say, very good, fill out our change form. And they're going to say, here's the change I think we should make. Here's the impact to the product, to our project or our product. This is what impact this change is going to be. It's going to save us money. It's going to make things faster. It's going to help whatever. But here's our change. We have a new stakeholder who wants to add these requirements. Because it's new TCDC, here's the new requirements. Change control board, evaluate these, right? And so then this form goes up to the board. Does the person who nominated go before the board so they can explain it? I don't know. You decide if that's in your process or not. Does the project manager represent it? It's in your process. So the board's going to review it. So you're going to write down in your change control log that you had this, it went to the board on this date. The board reviews it. They're going to come back approved or denied. If TCDC wants it, it'll probably come back approved, right? And then you're going to write that in your change control log. Decision was made on this date, approved or denied. And if it's approved, then you're going to implement the change according to whatever your change management process is. So that's the process of the change control board. There are a few questions about that process on the exam. The board in writing, somebody formally submits a change, the board reviews it, it's all in the log. And then if it's approved, you're going to implement it and monitor it to see what impacts it makes. Okay, in the agile approach or the iterative, adaptive, roll and wave approach, the product owner or project owner owns the backlog. If someone wants to add something to the backlog, they tell the product owner he adds it to the backlog. Doesn't have to go to a board, doesn't have to be reviewed. There's no plan to change as we go. So it just goes back. And then they have a refinement meeting where the team members, along with the product owner, is going to look at the backlog, prioritize it, ask if it's relevant, break it down into smaller pieces. What are the tasks and activities associated with this requirement? Right? And then it just goes through the process of sprint planning. Occasionally we do sprint refinement meetings and look and say, are these backlog items still relevant to our scope? If they're not, we toss them out. If they are, we keep them, prioritize them, all those kind of things. Okay. So no formal board. New TCDC says, I'd like to have these requirements in the project. Okay, we'll throw them in. Take a look at them. Just that simple. But the product owner or project owner owns the backlog. In collaboration with the team, they decide what items go into a sprint. When it's in the sprint, the team owns the items in the sprint. Okay, just as a review, those are test questions there. Okay. And then because the adaptive approach or iterative approach, incremental, rolling wave, agile, has no plan, there's really no change plan. It just is constant change, constant growth. Okay. Value collaboration over control. So change control board, controlling change, Agile, we're just collaborating on this project. Creating it as we go, just collaborate, see if it's a good idea or not. If we have changes to contracts, so they're set legal documents. But we can't always foresee everything that's gonna happen, right? So sometimes we want to change a contract. So you have to get the procurement office involved, you get finance involved, you get the legal people involved, if you're gonna make a change to contract. That's a big deal to change a contract. Even if it's, well, even if it's just a small clerical error, sometimes it takes a lot to change a contract. So may involve the dispute resolution. You have to write everything down. So there's a couple different types of changes. That's that bottom line. We're going to look at the next slide for a couple different changes we make to contracts. And you'll see a test question associated with each one of these changes. So an administrative change is just something like we misspelled the company's name. So those are administrative changes. It doesn't have any substance to the contract. It doesn't affect pay. It doesn't affect scope. There's just some administrative change to the contract. So just had a contract to buy a house. I had to sign a change form because I'm buying it through a trust. And it was, this company as a custodian for Julie Bellemare. And it had to be changed as this company as a custodian for Julie Ann Bellemare. You have to have your middle name. Really? But like the other ones didn't. I don't know. For some reason, you have to have your middle name. So we have to do a change to the contract to just add your middle name to it. That's just an administrative change. We have contract modifications. We're going to change something substantial about the contract, probably the scope. Maybe we had agreed to a budget, but because we're going to change the scope or there was some economic increase, need an adjustment. So we're going to change and modify the contract. Sometimes it's not going to get done in the time we wanted it to get done, or we're going to add something to it. So let's just modify this contract in a lot of different ways. So we can decide we want you to do something different. A supplemental agreement is something in addition to the contract. So we're not going to change the contract. We're going to add to it by giving a supplement to it. So, and it's, maybe we've built it and we're going to transition. And for a while we need a sustainment piece. So we're just going to add a supplemental agreement for you to stay on and do some sustainment for a little bit. Because our contracting office is really busy and it's going to take a while to get a contract out for the sustainment contract. So we're just going to do supplemental and allow you to stay on for a while longer and do this until we can really get our act together and bid it out and do a formal contract. And there are constructive changes that are made by the buyer. So that's the government, you buying a service from a vendor, right? So, and changes made by the buyer through action or inaction. Action or inaction. I'm always like, what does that mean? You didn't pay them? You didn't. And I had an example in my head that just left me. It's the example of a constructive change. Let me come back to it. It may pop back in my head. An action one. So termination of a contract, we're going to change it because we're ending the contract. So who knows what, maybe the project is ending early. So all the contracts are ending early. Maybe the vendor can't supply what we want them to supply anymore. So we're going to terminate their contract. Maybe they're just not doing the work we want them to do. So we're going to terminate their contract. So we're going to end it. And this says the vendor defaults. They don't necessarily default. The buyer could just have we're just not going to do it anymore, right? We've decided the project's not worth it. We're going to end it and close the contract. A vendor cannot terminate a contract. Only the buyer can terminate a contract, right? The vendor can just quit showing up and quit working. But they're still under contract. They can't terminate the contract. Now, there might be a clause that says some way the vendor can, but unless there's a clause in there, vendor can't terminate it. Only the seller can terminate the contract. All right, constructive changes. Yay, completely blank. Because it makes things better is what we typically think of. That's the idea of constructed. We're gonna make the whole thing better. Who has an examples? Well, you're our contractors. Who are our contractors in the class that have an example where we've the government has asked for something that's not in the contract, but it's so close that you're like, I think we can do this. We're just almost like stretching it a little bit.
20 students and then you get 37.
Yeah, maybe. It actually changed well, maybe that is a constructive change because I got in this situation because we said, well, we got 20 seats in a class. So I said, okay, I'll find a place with 20 seats. Can you have an online option? Sure. Out of those 20, some people can participate online. That would be okay. We'll allow that. And then there are 4 people who wanted it online and there were 4 people in a wait list. So I said, you know what, go ahead and take the 4 people on the wait list, add them to the class, and I'll just count the online as like free. And that's where we ended it. And before I knew it, there were 17 free people online. I was like, well, I meant those 4 people. So maybe that's constructive change. That was action or inaction, right? I just said, all right, we'll let the people online just count as free seats. That's fine. Just put 20 in the class.
It's almost like a verbal agreement.
It became like it's a verbal statement. So I guess that really is changes made through action or inaction, right? I just said, okay, we'll just, the people online, I just won't count them against 20 seats.
What about like when we had a task order?
Tell me more about the task order.
So like we had a small team working a project. The government requirement was way too big for this size team, doing a good job. So they decided we need to provide more resources and let a completely new task order to focus just on this project.
So was that a modification to the contract though? I would think
That's what I
that
thought it
would be
was
a
at first,
modification
yeah.
for a contract. So a constructive change, yeah, it isn't
That's what-
necessarily written. It could be written though. I may have to give you an answer next time. Sorry.
Task orders are generally written.
Yeah, so I generally think of it task order. So if it's not a change to the contract, but a task order, I may think of that as more a supplemental agreement. Becomes attached to that contract though, is attached to that specific contract. I'm gonna look up a good example and give you back. Maybe that allowing the online not to count against the 20 seats, so therefore 17 people ended up online. That may be constructive change, but I'll have a better example for you. Get my brain clicking on that subject. Okay, plan for change. Here's what you want to do. Coach people. How we're going to do the new way of working. Enable an agile operating system, which means people can learn it bit by bit here. Going to learn it as we go. Going to keep our knowledge current. What you don't want to do is a situation we were in. We're going to implement a new software system for AMC, being Air Mobility Command AMC. And we're like, I kept asking, where's the change management plan? Because we're going to go train people on how to do this, but they don't know anything about this, right? So we need to prep them so that when they come to training, they're open to learning. That's what I want. Because otherwise they're going to sit there thinking about everything else they need to do and they don't care. I don't even know why we're here, right? And they said, you don't need to see the change management plan. They're in the military. They'll do what they're told to do. And I said, oh yeah, we'll see if that works. I said, that won't work. That's what I initially said. That won't work. There's a process you have to go through because we're talking about people. People don't operate that way, not senior level people. Come on, right? Like first graders operate that way. And when they don't operate that way, you say, okay, but if you don't do it, I'm telling Santa. And then they'll do it, right? So, but senior people in the military really don't do that, but that's what we're going to do. I'm telling you, you're going to do it. You just have to do it. Okay. We'll see how well that change sticks. Right. And then don't alienate those who are like really against it. Okay. Like you can be against it. I'm just not going to push you farther away. You'll come around eventually. I'm going to focus with other people. You'll eventually soften up. Things won't be so bad. You know, I'm sure it took a while for everybody to give up their horse and buggy and get a car. Eventually they did. Nobody has horse and buggies that they travel with anymore. Well, there is a little group still that has one. But they'll travel in cars now. They just won't drive them, but they'll travel in them, right? Eventually, we're giving up the horse and buggy and adapting to cars. Right, plan for change. So things you can do, attitudinal survey will be on the exam, and that's why it's bolded there. So as we're getting ready to do the change, let's find out how people they know they have a need for it. A lot of us don't even know we have a need. Like, this could be better. Like, I didn't even know this could be done better. Why are you just now telling me that this could be easy? Right? Then I have to do all of this process. So we're going to do a survey to find out before and again after the change. People come with all kinds of feelings and emotions. And sadly, we're emotional creatures, and our emotions often help us make decisions more so than our intellect. So an information campaign up front to let people know what's coming, ease into it. We're not going to shock them. Be open and transparent about the potential effects. Now, hopefully they're all good, but sometimes it's not. Like, we're all going to have to get new computers. It's going to take a little while. We're not all going to get them at once. We're going to phase into it. And that means you got to change something about how your desk is configured, right? We know that. It's all coming. Right at the end of my time at TRANSCOM, we're getting rid of all the telephones. Nobody's going to have a telephone on their desk anymore, right?
Attic.
Going to answer it through the computer. Lots of communication about it is coming. We're going to start with this J directorate, and then we're going to go to these J directorates, and we're going to go to these J directorates. Okay, set it up. And before you take your phone away, let's test it and make sure it's working. Let's make sure you understand there's people in your directorate who are trained to know, right? So went through all of these. Here's what's going to happen. Help you. So I'm like, I'm all ready for it. It worked. They took my phone. It didn't work anymore. Right? I'm old. Takes me a while to learn new technology. Hate that, but that's life. And so I just found another job. No. That's not. Okay, so be open and transparent about the potential effects, and then consider the rollout plan. I saw that emails ahead of time. Okay, this I decided to put a big X on it because I'm 100% positive it's not on the exam anymore. It's a PMI program that they were rolling out to sell to companies. That's about creating a vision statement and communicating it. So that little chart is the North Star statement. And that's your vision. Let's get everybody aligned to where we're going. Get everybody pointed to the North Star. Okay? It's a great little plan, but it's not on the exam. So just put a big X through it. Don't bother studying that if you're going to take the exam. Okay, be a change leader. If I were to read these, I know you're going to say, wow, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
I
Roles of the project manager.
think we talked about this the first class. It's the roles of the project manager. It's the exact same list. Be a change leader. What are the roles of a project manager? There you go. Same list. You're going to want to be familiar with that list for the exam. You'll see it. You'll want to recognize if they give you a list. You're going, oh yeah, that item's on the list. All right. Complexity. If you don't know this, organizations can become quite complex. You work in an organization that's quite complex and part of a bigger organization that's really complex. And so complex that if you work with a joint staff, you'll be like, wow, they really don't know what's going on. It's really confusing now, right? So it's a pretty complex organization. There are thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people in your organization, right? And not everybody moves at the same pace at the same time and knows the same information. In fact, we keep people from knowing all the same information. So you work in the VUCA environment, right? People familiar with that term?
Yeah.
The Army used that term a lot, but I don't know if the others use it. Yeah, the VUCA environment. And PMI has taken the term VUCA, and maybe we're going to get to it later because part of it's up there. VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. VUCA. So up there we got complex, ambiguous, and uncertain, but volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. That's the VUCA environment. So it can be quite complex. So how do you deal with changes and issues and conflict and all these things in an environment that is really complex. How do you get change to stick in an environment that's so complex? Because so many things are working and you got to fit it all in with everything else that's in motion with with this complex organization. Now, your project is to create something of value and something needs to be changed of value, right? That last line of the definition of project is it creates some sort of change that enables value. You have to do change management as part of doing a project and incorporating it into the organization. And when you have to incorporate it into a complex organization, it gets even more difficult because there's all these moving pieces and somehow you got to get moving and in there in the right place as well too. So strategies for working with complexity. You can decouple the parts. So decoupling it, taking apart and pulling it apart. So if you think of like a big knot that's all tangled and you start loosening it up some, get some space in there, you can pull some things apart and loosen up that knot and then be able to untangle it. So decoupling is this too. You can take apart the parts. So maybe we're going to look at, instead of TRANSCOM, we're going to look at J1, J2, J3, J54, not 4-5, but 5-4, J, right? So we're going to look at parts of it. And then maybe that's even more too complex. So we're going to look at J1A and J1B and J1C, J1D. I don't know if you have A, B, C, D. I was just using those letters to talk about, we break that down even further, right? And so that's decoupling. And so then we can use the smaller pieces and figure out where our project work into a complex organization. Reframing the problem. So we can say, we just want to look at things from a different perspective and change the narrative, change the frame of how we see it. The box theory. So we talked about product box earlier to say what can fit on like a cereal box, marketing. That's
Elevator
how you
pitch.
want to describe your vision. This box theory for reframing the problem is picture a box and there's some object in the box that we're looking at. And okay, I have a globe in the middle of this box and I'm going to look at it from this angle and I'm like, oh, there's some land and some water. And someone else is looking at it from this angle and says, no, there's just a lot of water. And someone else is going to look at it from this angle and go, well, yeah, there's water, but it's all frozen, right? I mean, we have all these different perspectives. So you can take a problem and go, okay, if I look at it from a personnel perspective, it looks like this. If I look at it from an operations perspective, from this side of the box, it looks like this. Well, if I look at this side of the box, I'm going to look at it from a legal perspective, and it looks like this. Now, if I turn to this side of it, so I can look at each side of the box has a different perspective, and I can see how I could possibly reframe the problem to be able to better communicate it or fix it or incorporate my change into it. Balance, consider the type of data used. I don't even know what PMI means by that, to tell you the truth. Again, consider the type of data that you use, but how do you balance that out? Okay, so there's some data that's going to, that will lead you into different directions, right? So I can take some data that's going to be very hardcore data and look at a financial kind of piece with data. I can take other data about how people feel about something, right? So I can frame problems different based upon the data that I'm using. So maybe it's using some of that data and box theory to balance things out. I know what using different type of data means. I don't know how to tell you to balance that with, or to connect that with balance, but I don't think it's on the exam. If you're here to take the exam, don't worry about it. If you're here to learn something, sorry. All right, review or remake processes. Now, this is a really hard part about being a project manager. When you're supposed to enable change and create something of value, but you can't change any processes. Sometimes it really prevents you from being able to make those changes you need for the company to get the value that it. That's where you have to go back and tag your project sponsor or a business analyst or someone at a level who decided that this is a project we should do. Someone had a needs analysis. You got to go back and grab them and go, you know what, this policy is preventing us from really meeting the goals that we had and creating the value. So it's not just doing the task, right? Because well, I can do all of the tasks, but to really get the value that you need, we need a different policy here. And so if your reports are just simply status about how much is done, and you're not talking about the value you're creating or how you're going to improve the organization, then you're going to have a harder time making these changes at the end. You're going to have a harder time changing any policies you need in order to get the value. So don't forget to talk about value all along while you're doing your project. So change is going to happen and it's going to be good. Right, involve your stakeholders, plan for failure and fail safe. So you've probably heard fail fast, fail often, right? But it's not about failure. I really hate that saying. It's about discover the right way to do it. Because we don't know the right way, we're just checking off ways to do it, right? So if it doesn't work, we're not going to linger there. Go try something else. That doesn't work. Okay, let's just go try something else. We're not just going to linger on the failure. That's what fail fast, fail often means. So they're changing a little bit to fail safe. I heard something the other day and I'm like, oh, that's a much better way than saying fail fast, fail often. Of course, I'm not going to be able to recall it right now. But the idea of fail fast, fail often, which PMI supports, fail fast, fail often, that's an agile approach to doing things, is not really about it's okay to fail. It's about just keep trying until we find the right way. Right? Don't. Okay, that didn't work. Okay, go on next. We're not going to just hang around and linger on that failure, right? Next. Okay, rely on tailoring. Again, anything can be tailored. And if it's really complex, try to move some things, tailor some things, that's okay. Be resilient. Fail fast, fail often. Move on. Be resilient. Prioritize collaboration over rules. That's an agile manifesto item. And then collaboration over instructions over control. Questions about any of that part right here? Change management, complexity. Let's take a break. All right, how much of a break do you need? 10 minutes, 15 minutes?
It's fine.
10's fine. All right, we'll do a 10-minute break. We'll come back at, well, we'll take a 12-minute break. We'll come back at 11:45.
This month.
Okay, we ready to start up again?
That is hubris though, it's so.
I started picking up the pace and just going, this is on the exam, thinking that we had a lot to cover today because I did some review slides and, but now I'm like, okay, I think we're gonna make it. I think we're gonna get through everything here, so. Whew. Okay, so during our break, Shannon had looked up and found that the F Word Beer is a microbrewery in Cottleville, where St. Charles Community College is located. That's the town out there, called Exit 6 Microbrewery. If you look up the article, Exit 6 Microbrewery, the F Word, his response to the lawyers to the response to the cease and desist letter is absolutely hilarious. Oh my God, he has a lot of fun with this, right? And so this article was an NPR article. NPR picked up on this news thing. That's why which is how I heard about it. I think it was national news. It's funny. So, so you can look up Exit 6 Microbrewery, the F Word beer if you want to. And he says, we're also going to stop the Happy Meal McDonald's something other honey lager, just to make sure there's no more confusion and no more legal issues. He has fun with this. Okay, so I also wanted to look up a constructive change to a contract. And I'm like, all right, kind of this example of this class is a decent example. Another example that I've experienced that a constructive change. So currently on a contract with the Defense Logistics Agency, working issues with the F-35.
Yeah.
I know.
Every time I say it.
Any issues, it's just, but the F-35 complex situation. There's a person who's working the processes for sending repair parts OCONUS, so overseas. Not an easy process because you can't just use a SOFA agreement, a status of forces agreement, because the aircraft is not solely owned by the United States. So you can't just use a United States SOFA agreement for a product that's not owned. So it is some complex stuff. So like we need to create some business rules and processes, and she doesn't have time to do that. Hey, contracting team, can you write this business rules guide for us? And we said, sure. And then someone said, what's in your contract? Our contract is to support this. It's not really to support the transportation piece. We're like, well, it's kind of F-35 related. We like this person. She needs help. Go ahead and help her. Go ahead and do that. So inaction by the government, it's not going to be added to the contract. It's just extra work that we're going to do. We've agreed to do. It's just, so that's sort of the constructive change to a contract. It's not going to result in a contract modification. It's not going to be a long-term kind of deal. It's going to write this little policy book and move on. All right, so outside the scope of the contract, we're just going to do it. All right, so there's follow-up from earlier. All right, let's go back to continuous improvement. Talked about continuous improvement is already, right? Ongoing effort to improve our product, services, results, processes. Product, service, results would be the project, right? Product, services, the processes. Through small incremental improvements, the idea of most continuous process improvements is you have small steps along the way, and that will make you more successful to reach your long-term goals if you'll just take small steps along the way. So you want to lose 50 pounds. Oh my gosh, that's a lot. But what if you just lose like 1 pound at a time? Can you just lose 1 pound? All right, just lose one more, and then one more. Eventually we'll get to 50, right? But it's going to do small bits at a time and we'll get there. Okay, that's what we want to know from that slide. So in order to make sure that continuous improvement really does result in continuous improvement, it's a mindset, but reduce the improvements, we're going to ask a few questions. our continuous process improvement or continuous improvement will be more successful if certain things happen. Is the organization using the lessons learned register? Do we have a lessons learned register that we keep and that people have access to? How many of you have accounts with JILIS, the Joint Lessons Learned System? Fun, anybody online got an account with Sally Perez and the Joint Lessons Learned? Because if not, she'd be glad to give you one, I'm sure. She's a Navy person. For all you Navy people in the class, she'll hook you up.
2,
All right, Chief does, yes.
3.
That's why it's a 5. All right, see, go get a Joint Lessons Learned account. And there's unclassed, classified, soon gonna be top secret, I think, if you have that clearance. And the very first system at TRANSCOM to implement AI. That, right? So you're gonna go want an account to see that. But a organization that has a lessons learned system and uses it is more likely to adapt a continuous improvement process. Do you have team members who are focused on continuous process improvement or continual improvement? So are they Six Sigma certified? You know, TRANSCOM had that as a goal for a while. I don't know if they still do or not. Do you have people who are familiar with Kaizen or any of the other lean methods? Crystal method is not crystal meth. That's different.
I was thinking it. I was thinking it here.
Like, what?
Crystal method's
Or the band from the 1990s?
Yeah, maybe. So it's a method that prioritizes people within a system. So it's about prioritizing. CMMI, anybody CMMI certified? It's a fairly new certification out there, but maturity model information, it's a pretty easy certification to get. So if you want something else on your resume, that's a good one to go get. It's getting hot, actually. This one's becoming in demand. It just hit the scene not so long ago, maybe a year ago. That's a hot certification. If you're looking for something to add to your resume before you get out of the military, CMMI you may want to look at. But again, process improvement. Is there a process improvement plan? So TRANSCOM has a section of people who does process improvement, continuous improvement. Has anybody seen their plan? They must have a plan. Nope, it's kept within that little group on the 3rd floor, right? Maybe we want to ask to see their plan and how TRANSCOM is trying to improve. Does a project plan address continuous improvement? So continual improvement. We talked about our project plan and those 10 management plans, maybe 11 if you count compliance. But do we have a CI plan? And where do we have our plan to talk about how we're going to continually improve? Maybe something about growing our team. And if we're agile, retrospectives is all about that. That's what the retrospective is about. So if you're working a different type of project, a traditional project, do you have times where you do AARs? Do you have just a touch base meeting? Where are we? What's everybody doing, right? So you may want to add that in if you're focused on continual improvement. Is a risk register up to date? You thought about the risk. What are we doing? How are we solving our issues? How are we preventing issues from happening? Are we tracking that? Are we talking about that? Am I pushing the right buttons? Okay, that fail fast and self-correct culture, right? It gets talked about, fail fast, but just don't linger on that, right? Try another solution. That one didn't work. Okay, try something else. Okay, that didn't work. Try something else, right? Anybody play Wordle? This is what I feel like when I play Wordle. It's like a competition in our house between me and Shannon with playing Wordle. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't work. Try something else. That didn't work. Try something else. And whoever gets Wordle the fastest has to make all the major decisions for the day. That's what we do in our house.
Wait, what?
So whoever gets Wordle the fastest, like today, it took me all 6 tries to get it. Shannon's an amazing word guy, vocabulary that's out of this world. So he often gets Wordle before I do. And but whoever gets Wordle first or in the fewest tries has to make all the major decisions for the day.
That's a punishment.
I was gonna say I'd purposely fail.
So don't give away my secrets.
So you may defer sometimes, but I'm like, I don't know. We can't agree on something. You got to make the decision. You won Wordle today, so you got to make the decision on that. Okay, I let him think he gets to make the decision. Okay, truth be known, don't tell him, but you got to let him think he has. Okay, fail fast, self-correct. Right, do retrospectives talk about continuous improvement? What did they talk about if you're not talking about how to do better? That's what it's all about. What went well, what didn't do well, what didn't go well? How do we do better in the future? What did we learn from this that we want to pull forward to the future? Do members participate in retrospectives? We have those that just sit there and only 2 people speak up, right? On everybody. Are we implementing changes? Are we measuring the effects? Selecting improvements. How do we know what improvements we're going to implement first? So we can do different experiments to see what needs to be improved. The A/B testing is like, which issue needs improvement more, A or B? A or B? How about B or C? I'll flip it, B, C, C or D. So that's the A/B testing. The Pareto chart we talked about, the histogram stacked from highest to lowest. So we know what our issues are here with the Pareto chart. We're going to select the issue causing us most problems. Now with the Pareto chart, we're talking about continuous improvement. Where can we make the biggest impact? That may be the question we're asking with the Pareto chart. Where can we make our biggest impact? Pareto chart just lines it up so it's easier for us to determine, as if we look at a bar chart, we can't really tell which is the tallest. Pareto does it for us. Okay, again, don't forget the 80-20 rule. There's a large number of problems that have a small number of issues. Large number of problems have a small number of issues. So you can, by looking at 20% of those issues, you can impact 80% of your problem. And do you need to escalate something? That's what that's asking. Maybe you need to escalate. When you're thinking about making changes, think about changes at the individual level, the team level, and the organization level. Because you're going to want to phrase them differently, and you're going to want to incorporate change slightly different. The way you incorporate change for an individual isn't quite the way for a team, because it all has to fit together, changing the team, right? And then the organization is multiple teams. I think you always have to start with the impact to the individual, because that's common denominator through all of those, right? But then how do you make it a team effort? How do you make it an organizational-wide change? All right. We already talked a little bit this about TRANSCOM, but outside the people who are designated to do continual process improvement, who does continual improvement within your sector? How does that happen at TRANSCOM? Just brief senior leaders and we let them tell us their vision and how we figure out how to fit into
I
it?
mean, we typically do COAs, like, hey, here's COA 1, 2, and 3. I mean, showing different, improvements with it, I guess. I'm not really sure on that.
Do an AAR.
AARs.
AAR.
So anytime we get senior leader feedback, or we talk about what the acceptance criteria is, what their vision, what their goals are, to think about what does that mean for us and how to implement it, right? And so from there, we may think about some changes we need to make. This is an area where most organizations could do better, especially an established organization, highly regulated organization. We even think about, like, how can we even improve this organization? Right? And then our competitors suddenly outpace us. So why can't TRANSCOM act at least a little bit faster when you see what Amazon does? When you see what FedEx does? TRANSCOM does TRANSCOM technology compared to Amazon technology.
And we do it for twice the cost.
Oh,
So I definitely agree there could be improvement, but there are different levels of risk thresholds involved. Like if we accidentally send something to a random wrong person, okay,
yeah, so TRANSCOM, not taking a lot of risk, right? We want a lot of procedures, a lot of documentation, pretty low risk threshold when it comes to what the mission is here, right? Think about starting Amazon, the kind of risk you have to take there.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of risk, creating a brand new system.
you're creating it, sure, but I just mean like maintaining it. Like if it's okay if their $10 air filter or whatever gets broken in transit or the customer like wants to return it and then Amazon's like, no, never, just keep it. We don't care. Okay. Like they're on like a totally different scale. Like maybe in the grand scheme, the scale's similar, but like individual units shipped scale is probably not as high of a risk.
So
Not now.
Amazon didn't always say, just keep the product. You know, Amazon had to add to it. We're like, how do we do returns? It started with that, like pay for return. Okay, you don't have to pay for return, which became then, okay, it's cheaper to just keep it. We'll send you another one. I mean, they had to go through processes to get to where they are today because someone looked at this continuous improvement
Good point.
plan, right? So how do we continually improve so that people will pay us a membership fee in order to continue to buy things from us, right? You're going to pay us to shop with us. And people who buy their membership fee spend like 68% more. We're going to charge you to shop with us and you buy even more. How did
And
they
now
do
let's
that,
add
right?
movements. As much sense as that made at the time, but
Mm.
great point.
And also, you know what, we will warranty your product up to $1,000. You're going to fight with the manufacturer and they're not going to help you. Well, you know what, we realize you're an Amazon customer. We're going to provide a warranty for you with that too, that if the manufacturer's not going to, we'll take care of you.
So-
Good business model, but here's their risk. They burn out people.
Yep.
Oh, do they burn people? They make people work really hard.
That's why they love military transitioning people. But people go there and they stay for a year, pump the resume up and then leave.
Yeah.
Because they know that
They have tons of incentives, lots of money you can make with Amazon, but you earn it today and you get it in 3 years. There's this, like it's dangling out there for you. You stick around and you can have this.
Yeah, I
bonus,
think to
right?
your
So there's
point-
some risk.
I think to your point, though, it's always hard. Sorry. What were you gonna say, buddy?
well, the risk has changed, right? So they're so big now that their risk, it's become mitigated over the years by their size.
Mhm.
But because they can absorb any of the small losses at the small unit level.
What I'm saying though is that, yes, starting up a new company, whatever it is, Amazon, anything else, risks involved, totally got it. Yes. But right now, any shipment that Amazon does and the process they do with it doesn't necessarily have to have as many checks and balances as any shipment we do.
I think you can
I'm
look at
saying
it.
that their system may be really good and we can certainly learn from it, but it is a different level of risk because they are shipping $10 air filters and we're shipping bullets or,
Well,
right? And
I think you can look at it though from the argument, we are not a business model, right? So we have to accept risks that are put upon us by the Congress and the legislative body. So for example, having the requirement to surge to 10 times our capacity in an O plan in the Pacific, no business would accept that type of risk because it doesn't make any sense to have that type of cost in transportation in reserve at any one time. But we are required to have that. So we don't. So while we do use TWICF and treat it like a business, we can't operate like a business because we have inherent risks that we don't control. To your point, transporting highly valuable material.
but also to your point, Chief, like it's a little bit of apples and oranges. The government is self-insured or non-insured in reality. anybody who's ever experienced a casualty or a large scale hurricane or natural event, you know, you say, well, how are we going to pay for this damage? Well, we're not. We're going to take it out of something. Whereas Amazon has insurance for any of those little things that might happen. You know, whether it's like in the news this week, Boar's Head has a listeria outbreak, right? They, you know, allegedly some people may have died from eating their products. That they have insurance that covers those things, you know, whereas government funded sort of entities don't.
So my point is, great discussion. No, but if you don't think continual improvement, if you don't do continual improvement, your competitors are. Right?
Sure.
Competitors are. So it's okay if you don't, you're just gonna get outpaced. You're gonna get outpaced if you don't think continual improvement.
But, and then,
Why we're concerned about China.
so I would
We
say,
kept improving and we
Wait.
stayed at the top, no one's touching us. Whoa, what do you mean they're right here? Right? So,
inside the government model, I would say, who is Transcom's competitor? That's one of the questions that, you know, obviously China is an external entity that is a larger, you know, US DoD competitor, but, you know, inside the United States government, who is Transcom's competitor?
yeah, that's a great question. Which is why continuous improvement isn't highly valued at Transcom.
Yep.
Right? Yeah. Okay. We're gonna run through knowledge management. I think this is where we'll stop for the day. We're gonna talk about what I know of knowledge management. Please, you in here and you online, share what you know about knowledge management. I'll share what I know about the exam for knowledge management, but I gotta tell you, in this section of the exam, I answered every single question wrong. I know some things about knowledge management, I thought. But I'll show you my score at the end and you'll know exactly what section this is, because I got every single question wrong. So don't listen to me, share your own stories, okay? So I'm gonna tell you here. So knowledge management, Transcom has knowledge managers, right? People, that's their job to organize a SharePoint. Their job to make sure everybody has the latest version of whatever the documents are, right? To keep all of our information managed. So how many items are on the SharePoint that you look at on a daily basis? Thousands, right? And how many documents you think are stored in two different files? At least two different files. Which one's the current one? Which is there? How do we know where we're putting all of this information, right? Really, really hard to do. But this is what knowledge management's about. How do we control our documents and artifacts, which are
OPA.
everybody online too. Join us in OPAs, right? So we're gonna get all of our. Yes, thank you.
There it is. There.
All right, how do we do version control so that we know we're all working off the latest version? And how do we make sure we stay in compliance with all of our security regulations? So that's what we want to talk about. What was that last comment? I think that was an important one.
Sell OPA t-shirts.
No open t-shirts.
That was an important one.
What?
But only us.
Sounds like-
Only us will understand.
That's assuming some risk.
So now I'm putting the F beer in my mug. I've got it now. The F beer in the OPA mug. Okay, so the importance of artifacts. Artifacts enable reconstruction of our history, of our knowledge, right? So when someone leaves, we still have some knowledge left behind from them, right? We can still go back to a historical record and look at information that will help us today. It will benefit our current projects, right? If we look at projects that have been done in the past, we don't have to recreate the wheel all the time. There's information there that can help us. So we keep a lot of documents during our project. Let me repeat the slide for you that we saw in the beginning. In addition to our 10 or 11 management plans, there's a whole bunch of other documents that fall outside a plan, right? There are a lot of them. I think early on, I put some in gold that you're likely to see on the exam, but if you look at this now, you'll recognize some, the assumption log, a change log, issue log, lessons learned register. So we have a lot of documents creating a project. Want to be able to keep them. Okay, it is really nice if you are able to standardize documents. It's a simple way to kind of control documents to, I don't want to say control people's thought processes, but to organize our thoughts by topics, right? So we have documents and templates. It makes life a little bit easier to fill out a template rather than having to like craft a letter every time. You can fill out a template, makes it much easier. So standardized formats, standardized templates help the team. Standardized artifacts give us a structure for our processes. It allows easier version control. Now, timely distribution of documents, I don't know if that's from standardization. Maybe you standardize how the timing of the distribution, but it really takes someone to distribute the document. Maybe you set a timing that we do weekly reports, or this is what a daily report looks like. This is what a weekly report looks like. This is what a report at the end of a release looks like, whatever you do. And then, you know, everything can be tailored based upon your project's needs. We want standardized artifacts, but everything can be tailored. Information storage, where are you keeping all of your information and how are you going to keep it so that everybody sees it, even a team that's global, and everybody knows the latest version. Information radios help make work visible. The storage and distribution system should match the complexity of the project, meaning a pretty simple project, you shouldn't have to drill down like 6 layers to get to the document. It can be pretty simple. But if you have a really complex problem or a complex project, you may end up creating, you know, multiple folders because you have multiple teams working together to create a project. So not every team, like this team can have this set of folders and your other team can have this set of folders and another team can have this set of folders. So again, I'm working with the F-35 project. There are other teams doing other things with the F-35, but very different. I look at storage and distribution of repair parts. There are people looking at how do we use data to forecast where we should store F-35 or where the F-35 should be located. They're doing different kind of analysis. But in the F-35 folder, we'll see the same, like that team's information that has a completely different focus than our team. But because they're both the F-35, we stick them all in the same F-35 folder. So I end up sifting through the stuff that's not relevant to me, right? So your team with this name can have an F-35 folder, and my team with this name can have an F-35 folder. And then when we need to collaborate, I have access to your folder. I can go look, but we don't need to commingle all of our stuff. It makes it much more confusing for us, right? So let's just create a system that makes it simple, matches the complexity of our storage. Did my slide change here? Matches the complexity of the project or the simplicity of the project. Cloud-based systems are really helpful when you have remote teams. It's really helpful when you have global teams. Your team isn't located all in one area. Again, somebody stole DLA's technology money. So my team, I'm in Illinois. I have a team member in Florida, a team member in Virginia, a team member in Maine, and we support a client in Pennsylvania. Okay, we're all over. There's 2 different time zones though. Cloud-based so I'm a subcontractor. Accenture is the prime contract. Cloud-based with the Accenture computer and Accenture cloud, Accenture SharePoint. We have a DLA SharePoint. And I'm like, why are we not working in the DLA system? All the products we have belong to DLA. We need to share this with DLA. And because of some firewalls that are established, it's not easy to share with DLA from the Accenture computer. Why aren't we working DLA? And they're like, oh, it's just a hassle to like VPN, whatever. I'm like, yeah, VPN's a hassle to get in, but that's really where we should be working, right? So my team's like, whatever. It's too hard. I'm not going to do it. So I finally get access to the DLA system to get in there. Oh my God, it's awful. You can't log in. It's terrible. It takes so long to log in and you can't move between the systems very well. Like when you're in there, you're stuck in there and you can't navigate hardly anything. Oh, they've made it really difficult. So cloud-based, I can't work in your cloud very well. Except I should be working in your cloud because you own this information and it shouldn't be outside your system. It should be inside your system. The technology makes it incredibly difficult to put it in your system. So this team has found a workaround. We do it outside where probably shouldn't. It's a secure cloud, right?
Yeah.
But Accenture is a foreign-owned company. So they're firewalls. So that what we do, you can't tell Accenture headquarters what you do. They're in Germany. Got to get it to DLA somehow. So we're going to use email, unsecured, right? All kinds of challenges there, right? Trying to use a cloud-based system because we have to work in different clouds. Okay, off-site storage. Somebody tell me what off-site storage is. Anybody online, put it in the chat. Tell me what off-site storage is. So I had a test question that's, and you know how I answered it. I told you I got them all wrong. But I had a test question that said the chief information officer or not on a project site. That's exactly what I was thinking. Something that's not on the project site. I don't know, but the chief information officer comes to me and says, hey, we are updating all of our documents in offsite storage. So make sure that you have the latest version. You know, we want to make sure we have the most current stuff in our offsite storage. So how are you going to make sure that you have the most current versions in the offsite storage? And I'm like, what the hell's offsite storage? What do you mean? There's a filing cabinet in another building somewhere? Are you talking about the cloud? Are we, another company has servers? Like, I don't know what you mean by offsite storage. So you're taking my documents, putting them in offsite storage, wanted to make sure I give you the most current version. I don't even know what you're asking for. I don't know. I would tell you what I chose as an answer, so you don't pick it if I remembered what I chose, but I don't know. Right? But it was a version control question, but it was specific to offsite storage. I still don't know what offsite storage is. Okay, it's just located offsite. I think now looking back, I may try to answer that as if it was cloud. We're talking about going to the cloud. But the scenario was he wanted physical documents. It could have been a she, I don't know. But he wanted physical documents. Like, I don't know how to answer this question. But there's an insight for you for a bad question on the exam. You make sure you have the latest version in your offsite storage. So we have a configuration management plan. So I was like, is this another management plan to the project plan? I don't think so. I think they just call it a management plan, but it's how you're going to manage your documents to make sure you have the latest version. All right, so how is all of those documents that you're creating going to be managed, recorded, update, put in your SharePoint? How will you as a project manager track all those artifacts so that the latest ones get archived? Are you going to track, get rid of all the garbage, keep the good stuff, and then make sure it gets archived? How are you going to do that? And you're going to do that through your configuration management plan, but it's not one of the management plans that make up the project plan, okay? It's just how you're going to manage all of your documents. 2 questions on version control on the exam. And that's how do you create version control? So what is version control? Right, it's a system so that everybody knows this is the latest version of the document. How do you do version control for your documents at TRANSCOM? So SharePoint just updates it and we don't keep old copies. So if it's on the SharePoint site, that's the latest version. We don't, I mean, you can make SharePoint go back and tell you an older version. You want to see an older version, but we don't even keep the older versions. Just SharePoint, we only have the latest version. So that's one way of doing it. What's another way?
Add V2
Yeah.
to the file name.
Okay, or like, I do like signed, whenever I sign it, it's like signed CO.
Yeah.
Just sign it.
But you change the file name when you save it. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
We do the same thing.
But that doesn't mean that we eradicate the old files either though. So I mean, like,
So we put version 2.
yeah.
Maybe we put a date. Maybe we put our initials to who last changed it. How do we still know that's the latest version?
Oh, sometimes I put current and then I delete the other one that says current.
And then, and
Final
final.
is another day.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes I do more current. I'm just kidding.
What are ways online? I saw somebody. Put
They
something-
put a date actually, which does make sense.
I mean, yes, there is a time date stamp when you do save it. So that kind of, you do know that.
Or copy it.
Okay.
It's true.
All right. Any other ways you do version control? Those are all the right answers for the test. That's what you're going to see. So version numbers, time, date stamp.
Well, that's the right
initials,
answer.
thing.
Oh, my.
Look at there. Smarter than we thought we were.
Oh, my goodness.
So what was that one? You put the current version where? Create a final folder. Okay, so you have all the drafts in an archived folder and only one stays in your current folder. Everything else is archived.
Yes.
Shannon, tell me what some chat comments that popped up that I couldn't read.
Create a final folder. Speaking of shared drive. Tough to keep track of all of the places as well.
Yes. They end up in different places. Right? Something before that that popped up I wanted.
Keep the current file in the working folder and put the older ones in archive.
There was something right before that though.
Well, you should be.
I'm sorry, I'm not a fast reader. When it pops up, I'm like, oh, wait, I missed.
Versions to the draft folder.
Okay. So we have different folders so that we know old stuff here, new stuff in this folder. So everybody knows where to go to get the current stuff as a current folder. I wish I knew the exact question and answers to tell you, but I don't want to listen to you.
That's one of the options, just
That's version control, but there are 4 questions about version control on the exam.
So you're saying we can miss all of them and still pass?
You can miss all of them and still score above target.
What is target? Sorry.
We don't know, but it's passing. We just don't know what the percentage is, but it's passing.
So is there passing below target?
There is above target, target, below target, and wow, you really messed that up.
Okay, so below
Way below
target.
target. I don't know why you have 2.
At what point do they
passes.
not give you the certification?
Yes, that's
Thank
what I'm
you.
asking.
You have to be target or above target.
Okay, got it.
Below target, they're gonna be like, come back and try again.
Got it.
Way below target, they're gonna be like, go study some more.
Do they show you
There we
the
go.
questions you
Which one?
answers are?
They don't like give you a.
Take it, and then they just, you have to say, I promise I will not tell anybody what the questions are. And then it used to say, congratulations, you passed. But now it doesn't. It says, we'll send you the results in 3 to 5 days or something like that. But when you go to check out of the Pearson VUE site, if you go to a Pearson VUE testing center, you have to check out and the people there can give you a printout and it tells you whether you passed or not. In your case, it'll tell you you passed.
I like the confidence.
and
Yeah.
and then we come back and tell you what all the questions were.
So then,
And then I'm gonna say, did you see questions on this topic? Did you see questions on this topic? So you don't have to tell me the exact questions, but I know that this was a topic. You're like, oh, that version control, I had to answer a question where I needed to know that we should number the documents. I saw that stupid offsite question. It was worded really poorly, or no, it was actually worded really good, Julie. So you're obviously not as smart as you thought you were. No, I don't know, right? So, yeah. No, so yeah, come give me feedback about what you saw in the exam, because some of these things where I'm like, which budget chart did you see? Did you see the 3-column budget chart or the 5? I kind of like to know that.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna go, I didn't get that question at all. You're gonna be like, well, I still don't know the answer. What's on the test, right? But that's okay. That's even a better answer. I didn't have to deal with figuring out which one it was. Okay. This is where I thought if we can get to this point today, we're going to finish on time and get through all the slides. So at this point, let me ask you, we have 34 minutes of your time committed to be here. Do we want to knock out a little bit more time today? Or do we want to stop for today and pick it up again next week? Because I'm like, we have to get to this point to finish on time. And I was like, oh, I'm going to pick up the pace a bit.
I agree, let's press. That's what somebody said. Oh, somebody said stop.
Stop,
Oh,
stop.
Oh.
What else? So we got a couple presses, a couple stops.
I
We don't
was
have a team
impressed.
starter to tell us what we're going to do
Yeah,
here.
how do we,
Press
my
on.
brain is hurting.
Keep making Shelley.
So in your opinion, is there enough time next week for us to accomplish everything that we need to?
Yes, yes, I do believe there's a next, because sometimes people have lots of questions about the exam, so I always know that that takes a little bit longer. And then we're gonna talk leadership next time. And I nailed the leadership section because I'm gonna tell you a couple hints on how to answer the questions. And then if you've been a leader, you're gonna be able to answer those questions easily, right? So that question with this group, I know some of you are newer, some of you are more seasoned, but there are themes to answering the leadership questions. So you work in an organization where senior people are and leadership happens around you all the time, even if you're not a leader there, right? That those answers are going to be pretty easy for you to answer, right? So leadership is 42% of the exam. So I don't want to go through it too quickly. I just know based upon the experience of this group and who's online that section's not going to cause you from not passing the exam.
If we stop now, though, we only have 34 and a half hours of instructional time, so we need an extra.
So I am going to give you study material for outside of class. 2,
Specifically him.
1.
Right.
That's what I meant by you. I meant you, just Augie himself here.
He was that kid that reminded the teacher about homework.
Weren't we supposed to have a quiz today?
Okay, so then here's what I'll do. Here's what I'll do for today. We can stop the instruction because enough people have asked me on breaks about the exam and the application.
Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about that?
Be great.
So Shelley, if you want to stop because your brain hurts, you can step out because we'll cover some more stuff next week. But if you want to stick around, this is just conversation and it shouldn't make your brain hurt. Okay? So you can stop recording. But
He just wants to go to the massage chair. That's.
you can go to the massage chair, then stop recording, go to the massage chair. Okay. So we've talked about the application and I've learned, don't put your job title.
You're saying in the
Project.
title, don't put your job title. So what should you put there then?
So what does it ask for that?
I mean, I'll
Actually,
pull
what I
up
put on mine,
because-
this was approved before.
So what does it say at the top?
Hurricane recovery post.
Yeah, no, where it says job title though. So that's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So don't put your actual job title.
Oh, you know what? And then,
There is a spot for your job title.
yeah, right?
Yeah, but
So-
the header of the experience is like project name.
The project name.
Yeah, I took
And
that.
then don't start with, in my job, I did this. I
Oh,
think that's where she ended up, in my job. And I was like,
In my project.
I wouldn't even start in my project.
I did.
I did, and then pulled out
Well,
clearly project stuff. So they were like,
because it was historic.
this was just your job. It was like everyday operations as opposed to here was a project. So I think someone just misread something in the beginning because it was clearly project oriented. Okay, so the application, look at words that mean responsibility, any of those 10 management plans that make up the project plan. Your application should be okay. More and more people being audited here, so I don't know what that's about. Just make it obvious that you work projects. Okay. Now, when you go for the exam, you can take the exam proctored from anywhere you want to take it, wherever you have strong internet, because you don't want to lose internet signal. So it can be proctored. You're going to log into a system that allows you to be proctored. People have told me that logging into that system can be a little difficult, but once you're in, you're in. That was the hardest part about it, was getting into their system. So you're not proctored the whole time. Someone comes on in the beginning and then they'll leave and someone else will come on and they'll leave, someone else comes on. But the computer proctors you. So it almost has like face recognition. So if your face leaves the screen,
Yeah.
like your dog comes into the room, your cat bounces up, you drop a pencil and you lean over to get it, your test is done. Okay,
Oh, wow.
so you got to make sure you're in a place where you have good internet, because the internet stops, your test is done. It used to be you called them and they would be like, okay, we'll reset it. But in September, they said too much of this nonsense is happening because you've already seen some test questions. So it changes how well you're taking the test because you've already seen part of the questions. So they reset it, you take it again, and they're like, you know what? It counts as your attempt. You now have to take it. You can take it again, but it counts as your second attempt.
Wow.
And you get 3 attempts.
Per
So-
$500 test fee?
No, if you take it again, it's going to cost you a little bit more money.
Okay, got it.
Cost you a little bit
So
more.
if you drop a pencil, $500.
If you leave the screen, yes, you're going to stick around here, right?
Check.
So I would have a couple, because you can have some material to take notes. So this is what you're going to do. You're going to log in. It's going to come up and you're going to show them that you're not cheating. Look, here's my environment.
Yeah.
Circling around here. Here's, oh, I should stop sharing my screen since I have this monitor. Sorry, guys. Let me. Where's the Teams thing? Did I disconnect from Teams? Shannon, are you still connected to Teams?
I'm still connected.
Am I in there? Am I out? You good?
You're not sharing anymore. I just have the banking room view.
Okay. So they can see the room. Can you guys see me? You're online? Okay, so you're gonna take your computer and you're gonna say, look, there's nothing in the room. Nothing here, nothing on the ceiling, there's nothing on the floor. I don't have little notes under my desk. I have nothing that says I'm cheating here. So then when they're good with that, they say, okay, you're gonna sit down, computer will be in front of you, and at any time you leave your computer screen or your internet gets cut off, something, you have a glitch, you're done. You could call them and maybe they'll help you, but their policy as of this past September was, no, sign up for the test again, right? So people have successfully taken it being proctored. They told me it's a little weird when they see someone come in and then someone goes out, but people have done it. So just make sure you have good internet, make sure you have a good environment where you're not going to be distracted and you'll be okay. And don't try to cheat and you'll be okay, right? Now, if you go to a testing center, the Pearson View Center in Westport offers the PMP exam, and the Pearson View Center in Edwardsville offers the PMP exam. If you go to Westport, they're going to make sure you're not cheating. So you're going to go sign in. They tell you to show up 40 minutes before your appointment time. I'm like, that's crazy. I don't like to wait. I showed up 15 minutes before my appointment time. I waited 40. I waited a long time, right? I should have showed up 40 minutes beforehand. So you go to the testing center, you're going to sign in. You have to show 1 or 2 pieces of ID. They'll tell you in the email what you need. So they prove it's really you. So you can't hire me to take the test for you. You got to go take your own test. There's lockers. So you can put some things in a locker. So while you're waiting to go into the testing center, you can be like on your phone. You can be like Chat GPT. Give me 3 PMP exam questions on schedules. And Chat GPT will pop up some questions. Sure, here are 3 PMP exam questions. So maybe you want to do a little studying before your test. I don't know.
Do these proctored locations charge you extra or is that part of your fee?
Part of the fee. So then PMI pays them for the test, right? So the locker, so you can put all your stuff in, and then you're going to go when the computer's open, your time's available, you're going to go into the testing room. Now they're going to make sure you're not bringing anything in with you. So they're going to say, pull up your sleeves. Let me make sure nothing's written on your arm and you don't have anything up your sleeve. Lift up your pants legs so I can see you have nothing in your socks.
I got
wanna
one.
Make sure you have nothing in your hair. I kid you not, I had to do that.
Wow.
They made me take my scrunchie off even.
Yeah.
Take it off your wrist. Show me your glasses. They took my glasses, made sure nothing was written on my glasses. That's big. Couldn't take a water bottle in, nothing like that, right? Flip your collar up on your shirt to make sure nothing's tucked underneath your collar. People have gotten creative in the way that they've cheated.
Are you the only one in this room when you're taking the test though? Like, I'm not,
No.
I'm saying like, are there others taking the test?
Yes.
Okay.
Different tests.
Computer stations, but everybody has at least 3 feet. You have 3 feet of space and a little glass divider. So there were other people taking tests where I was there, but I wasn't really bothered by it.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, it didn't bother me. I didn't even notice they were there.
Other than the subtle crying from the person next to you. No, I'm just kidding.
But you know, there was someone taking their test to be a doctor. There was someone taking a test to be an architect. They have a lot of people taking. Now, when I was sitting there waiting,
Yep.
my appointment was like in the morning, right? So somebody had started really early, came out, thought there was a problem, whatever. And then I hear the person tell them, well, you didn't pass the exam. That's the issue. And I was like, oh, person right here didn't pass their exam. And he was taking an exam to be an EMT. And I'm like, no, you go study some more because I want you to know what you're doing. Okay. So you go study some more. But it made me a little bit nervous, right? Sitting there. So you go into the room. They're going to log you into the system. So you know exactly what test you're taking, right? So they're going to log you into the PMP test. The computer then is going to pull out 180 questions based upon the percentage, like 42% leadership, 8% business acumen, 50% ways of working. And then it's going to divide them into 3 groups of 60. So whatever questions it pulls from those 3 groups, right, splits them up. That's what it is. You're going to take the first 60 and then you get a 10-minute break. Within that 60, you can move back and forth. So you can skip one, you can mark it for review. So you know to come back to that. When you get done, oh, there's a tutorial, tells you how the system works. So you can take time to do the tutorial and it doesn't count against your time. It tells you that. So you can, you know, walk through it. Why not? Walk through it, learn all the features of the computer, what you can do. So you can hit a little button that will pop up number 1 through 60. And it'll tell you, these are the questions you've answered and these are the questions you didn't. So I'm like, oh, I didn't answer number 11. I can just click on 11 and it'll take me right to question 11. And then I can answer it.
Sorry, you said you do 60 questions at a time and then it gives you a break?
60 and a 10-minute break. And then 60 and a 10-minute break.
Time for the 60 questions.
So you have 230 minutes to take the exam.
Got it.
And if you use 200 minutes on the first 60,
Right.
you have 30 left for the next 2 groups.
Got it.
You have 15 for each. So don't do that, right? There's enough time. So I took whatever time I needed for the first, and I probably reviewed 6 or 7 questions. Don't second guess yourself here, okay? Answering the best you can. If you don't know, you can mark it for review, but don't spend a lot of time going back and saying, I mean, if you don't know, skip it, you don't know. But if you're like, I'll think about that one some more. No, just don't do that to yourself. So once you feel like you've answered all 60, you're good. You can submit that 60 and it'll say, here's a 10-minute break for you. And you can look at the time. And I think the time was counting up. And so I was like, how much time do I have left? How
Right.
much time? And so I'm like, oh, I better pick up the pace. So the next 60, I went a little bit faster. And then I get to the third 60 and I was like, oh man, I have lots of time. I just can't do math. That's the problem there. I really had enough time. There was plenty of time. So I also finished with that 60 and I didn't want to leave the testing room and go through all of that, lift my pants leg, look at my glasses, all of that again, right? So I just stayed in the room and sat in my chair, scooted back a little bit. And I didn't want to scoot back too much because there are other people taking the test, right? But then I'm just going to sit here. I sat there probably like 3 minutes and I'm like, this is silly. I'm just going to start the next section. So I just said, go ahead and give me the next 60. At the end of that 60, I'm like, oh, I need a break. So I decided to leave. I got up, walked out of the testing room into the lobby area, walked, I think, out of their little office, and there was a water fountain there. I got a drink. I don't think you can get anything out of your locker. I don't think you can go to your car, but anyway, got a drink, took the whole 10 minutes, went back in, and that third section was much easier then. Like, take the break. There's the lesson I learned. Go ahead and take the 10-minute break. Go through that hassle of being patted down like you're an FBI wanted person, right? And then you can finish the test and at the end submit. Now, that's if you go to Westport. Just found out about the place in Edwardsville. So I went to Edwardsville to take my CAPM exam. Now, don't go spreading this rumor around, okay? But the guy there is like, what test are you taking, Kaplan? He's like, I was early for my test and right, got the lesson down. I show up early. He's like, well, you ready to go? I'm like, already? He's like, yeah, you can go back now. And there were fewer people taking the test. There were like 2, and then someone else came in later and he put them down at the other end. And I had a drink, right? I had gotten a fountain drink on the way. And so I'm putting that in my locker and he's like, aren't you going to take the drink in with you? You want to take? I'm like, can I? And he's like, well, you're not cheating, are you? I'm like, no. He's like, all right, take your drink.
Fountain of knowledge.
I'll have a drink. Okay. Didn't get patted down.
Wow.
Look at my hair. Didn't like trusted me. Foolish old man. So I went in and took the test. Like it was a completely different experience. And he's like, well, I'm like a third party Pearson VUE, so I talked to him afterwards and he's like, wait, you don't work for Pearson VUE, do you? I'm like, no. Because I'm like, I teach this, I want to try to remember what I wrote down. So they give you a dry erase board so you can take notes, you can write some things down, think about it. If there's things you want to remember, like formulas, I got to remember this, right? So you go in and immediately you want to write them down before you start getting stressed out over questions. You have a dry erase board. So I started keeping track of how many times they asked me a question. I had so many questions about which approach do you use. So I started having tick marks for that, right? Topics that I expected or didn't expect, and this was Kaplan. So I wrote it down. So afterwards I come out with my dry erase board and I'm like, can I sit here and study this for a while? Like, because I teach this. And so I want to study this. So he just let me keep it until I was ready to give it back to him. Right? Can I take a picture of it? He's like, no, you can't. Okay. But right. So that was much different experience going to Edwardsville. Now there's another test center if you live east of here. So there's east and south. I almost think it's like towards Carbondale. It's not down there, but you know where Chad lives? You know what area Chad lives? Mount Vernon. So just south of Mount Vernon is a Pearson VUE testing center that he took his at. So that offers it as well too. And I'm not sure if he was treated like he was a criminal or not there. But that's the experiences of going in to take the test. So don't get all rattled that, oh my God, they, made me flip up my collar and pull up my sleeves and looked at my socks and right. I mean, yeah, that's what they do to make sure you're just not cheating. They do that with everybody. Edwardsville was different. It's a little more relaxed there. Now he may do that, right? He probably should do that because there are cameras. They're cameras. So they see you pull out a piece of paper. It's a camera that says that, right? While he sits, there's cameras right there because the test proctor has to be able to see the people taking tests. So unless there's a window where you can look, they have cameras. Yeah, so 60, 60, 60, really plenty of time. And then within that group of 60, you can move around too. Other questions about that? We don't know how it's graded. I know you don't have to get them all right. And I suspect if you get maybe even as low as like 65%, you could pass.
It's like reading online, you see a lot of answers that are somewhere between 60 and 70%.
Yeah, because they don't tell you a percentage. And I think some questions are harder than others. That's for sure. You look at them, you're like, well, that was a super easy question. This question was pretty hard. And so they may be graded differently based upon, like if you miss an easy question, that counts against you more than if you miss a hard question. So if you miss a question that only 30% of the people get right, that may not count against you as much as if you miss a question that 85% of the people get right. So we don't really know how they score it. Now, most of the questions are scenario questions and they're like 4 or 5 lines long. And it was tiring for me to read all of that. So I started looking, it ends with a question. And I just started looking at the question. And sometimes I could answer it without even reading the scenario. Like you didn't have to tell me a scenario. You could have just asked me the question. But when I read the question and then read the scenario, it told me what to look for. So this question is about the schedule. And the scenario has things about the schedule and cost. Well, cost doesn't matter because the question is about scenario. Schedule. So the scenario is about schedule. I'm just going to pick an answer that's about schedule. So there was a question where, when the schedule gets extended, it's going to cost you more. So you need an increase in budget. Okay, probably true, but the question's about schedule. So don't pick an answer that's about budget.
Read the question.
The question's about schedule. So I started reading the question and then the scenario, and I found that was really helpful too. I didn't tell Wayne that.
I'll make sure.
Wayne's afraid to take the test. So Wayne was going to take the test on Thursday and then come talk to our class on Friday because I just took it the day before. Here's my experience. But he's like, I don't feel ready. So he changed the date. And I replied to his email and I'm like, dude, you won't feel ready. That's what I'm going to tell you, all of you. And Shannon told me to quit saying it and I'm not. And maybe he'll change his mind here because of Wayne, but you're not going to feel ready. Like, go take it with all those feelings of like, I don't know if I know enough. You do. I promise you, from the material in this class. And then practice questions. And I'm going to tell you some sites to go to for practice questions. You're going to be okay. You're going to be able to pass this test. Okay. So you're not going to feel ready. You're not going to feel like you know it all. You don't have to know it all. Who wants to be a know-it-all anyway, right? You don't have to know it all. You're going to pass the test, right? It's going to feel like, oh, I don't know. That's right. Go take it anyway. Right? You'll be okay.
We have those sites. I'm not here.
Oh, you can,
I think they're in our slides.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So there are some,
That's what I'm saying, like, I think change.
slide number 519 gives you some
That's fine.
videos where the person will pull up a question and I would say, pause it, see if you can answer. They'll answer it and talk to you the philosophy about answering it. The videos are like 7 hours long though, so I wouldn't just plan to sit and watch. But then there are some on the bottom of 519 and 520 are some sites that have pretty good PMP questions. I think they're free and they're pretty good. There are also some, so just recently I was told about Boson, BOSON. That was a pretty helpful site. It was $99 for this, but there's some other things that are like free for 7 days. So finish the course, do your application, get it approved, go
Wow.
go schedule an exam. Go pick your test date. So you don't want pick and test to come out at the same time. That's the two words. Go pick a test date, okay? And then it's the end of the day here. And then back plan your study schedule, okay? But really, those who take it within about 4 weeks do really well. They'll say, oh, you need like 30 days study time. And I've had people take it within 6 days after the class and pass. But I can tell you, nobody who's taken it within 4 weeks of the class has failed. Now, my sample size is small, only about 8 people. But they haven't failed. But the longer you wait, the less likely you are to take it.
And how long is it usually for your application to get approved?
Well, they say give us 5 days. And for a while, it was taking 5 days. But now it seems like it's like 2 days. People are getting a response back in like 2 days, or at least being told they're being audited. But yeah, it's not taking very long at all now. And so when your application gets approved, it will tell you what to do next. And it used to be you called Pearson View, but now you log into PMI. You don't have to become a member. You can if you want, but you don't have to become a member. And you pay to take the test. And then Shannon, I'm going to ask you to put something in the chat. Pay to take the test, and then it connects you to a Pearson View site. And then you can schedule your exam. Okay, I think this is the code GMGEMP. If you're going to become a PMI member, the PMPNM. If you're not a member, and this, my last class told me stopped working. I think they turn it on and off. This gets you a discount for the exam. It's like another $100 off the exam price.
Oh, wow.
Right? So don't know if it's working or now. It was working not very long ago, but the last class I had tried it and they said it wasn't working, and that was a couple weeks ago. So try it. Otherwise, you can Google discount codes for PMP exam, and some other places will pull up discount codes. It's still working for CAPM. CAPM is GMGCAPM, and it's still working for CAPM. But I'm not, maybe they have so many people doing it now, they don't need to throw out an incentive or something. That's something, oh, the exam, yeah. So they'll give you instructions and then you can go register.
Is it hostage?
The non-member code is DMG, PMP, November Mike. If you're not going to be a member, it ends in November Mike. And the member code doesn't have November Mike at the end. Okay.
All of next Friday's stuff will be uploaded to your YouTube
Chunk it out.
thing. If
Yeah,
it's
so
been there for a while.
So
because I'm like, guys, we got to get videos out quicker. They're taking a while. And so we recorded the Teams meeting, right? And so we're just gonna upload the whole Teams meeting, so you have to sift through all the little crap, but that'll get uploaded right away then, right? We're gonna
Okay.
upload them.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to see them right away, and then we're going to edit, it, so it'll be a little bit easier.
Okay.
And then I recorded one on floats, I'm gonna record one from documents. So I might record some other sections to make it a little bit easier to
Okay.
review and study. I am super busy through August
It's not.
8th, really. And then after that, my time frees up a lot, so I'll add some more as soon as I can. Actually, after this class.
It's closed.
After the 8th is when, and then I'll be able to do more, of the individual.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean,
just saying, I didn't change.
I was just like figuring out when I can, because I'll miss next Friday. When I can watch that one, but if you're uploading it
So
right away,
we'll
I'll have
upload the Teams video right away. So we haven't tried uploading the Teams video to YouTube. Let's hope it goes smoothly.
I have directions, so it's just a matter of
So I
time. It's gonna be a
typed it
large
back
file.
out, copied.
Okay,
So-
super easy to upload it to the YouTube.
Yeah.
It's just,
It should be ready like Saturday. Enough for you to read.
Okay, thank you.
okay, I don't have anything else. You have other questions? I'll stick around if you have other questions. Otherwise, thanks so much for coming. We'll be back next week, same bat channel. Thanks for hanging out online, guys. Any questions from online?
Thanks.
Welcome, welcome. And then next week, I may ask for your advice on if I offer another, people are like, oh, I think I kind of like this every Friday format rather than a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or a straight Monday through Friday. So I may ask your opinion on that next week.
I like.
Something again. What format we think, I like the Friday. SIUE does it every